All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Jamie Bailey, board member.
Bernadette Bauer, board member. Stephanie Smith, board member.
Ryan Christelli, board member.
Chris Desmond, superintendent.
Delaney Henson, student representative.
Ron Clark, athletic director.
Julie Moore, staff.
Adele Hope, staff.
Mark Keating, staff.
Melissa Madford, staff.
Mike Williams, yes.
Lisa Arnold, staff. Wendy Belvin, staff.
Jeff LaRose, staff. Eric Smith, staff.
G. Walker, staff.
Okay, approval of board minutes from November 22nd, 2022.
And the approval of board meeting minutes for November 22nd, 2022.
I'll second that. Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Before we move to the consent agenda, can I please have someone make a motion to add to the agenda the discussion for the Elma High School boys basketball fundraiser?
You like that under section 9, new business,
Yes.
following letter G, so as a new 8.
Yes, please.
Move for the addition of the boys basketball fundraiser to be placed under section 9, part G. Part H after G.
There's been a motion made. Is there any discussion? All in favor? See ya.
I'll second.
Did you say just a second or
No, I
I'll
said
second?
we need a second.
Oh,
We
sorry.
didn't get a second.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. A consent agenda.
I'll move for the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
It's been a motion made and seconded. Before we move further, I'd like to thank Kathy Delano and Rob Belden for their service and wish them well on their next endeavors. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're going to start off with discussion items with presenter Wendy Belden for the cell.
This is part of our Elma School District strategic plan on building emotional learning on how we're responding to the needs of our students following COVID. And this is rescheduled from last week, so. From last
Thanks for the reminder.
sorry.
I appreciate rescheduling, thank you. So. Okay, so.
Thank you, Mike.
Mute here. Feels very different when you're standing here. Okay, so each of you have one of the neural ed bags that all of our staff who participated in our summer institute received. And so part of what my goal and Lisa's goal is tonight is just to share with you the work that we're doing that is, it is not a curriculum of social emotional learning, but rather we as a school are looking at, as a district, the holistic child, so that it isn't 15 minutes, check it off, we've done social emotional learning. It's every day, every class period, they feel welcome, it's a social emotional learning environment for them. And so these are some of the tools that the teachers we also used a grant to purchase a surplus of these that are at each of the schools for as the students go into either the counseling center or as you learned from when Seaweed, Michael Raines presented about what ESD 113 has been able to bring into the schools and the work that they're doing. And then also just the brain breaks. So it's just a matter of getting the students back to focus because, you know, we're all conditioned to those commercial breaks, and a brain break is like a commercial break. So with that, we'll just kind of go through and show you what we have here. The Summer Institute, our focus was on infusing the neurotransmitters. We actually had the author of this book that everyone received, The Brain-Based Classroom, presenting with us, and Missy Widman, who is director for the neural education. And we've done 2 panorama surveys, student competency and well-being and student supports. We did our initial one last February so that we would get data to incorporate with our 5 lab. And we'll look more at that. So that's the dashboard edition that Eric has helped been instrumental in helping us. So bringing it all together, we just want to remember that SEL is not about compliance and control. It isn't about 15 minutes and we're going to reset your whole day, whether you know you left the house crying or had a hard time on the bus. It's about just, you know, all throughout their day, every moment, and that we are creating the environment that gives them the tools. So this down here is just a quick glimpse of the areas that we, as a staff, indicated were particular areas of growth that we wanted our students to focus on. And so we'll look more at that as we go through it, but this is a screenshot from our dashboard that compares actually the 2022, which was February of this year to October of this school year. So it'll be wonderful as we go through, and then we'll do another survey at the end of this year just to see changes and growth. And so this is just to remind us that up here, this is the castle diagram, which is the model that everyone follows for social and emotional learning. And it really is, it encompasses not just the school, but the family, the community. We do have 5 areas of focus within our district strategic plan. And this is just to show how they're all tied together. You know, we're starting at pre-K and early learning, where we are taking away the fear and that amygdala hijack of the unknown about school, getting them early, building that comfort level. And then as we move through the mastery-based learning and we get more the student as a co-author with that, and that they have autonomy and choice within, and that ties in with the universally designed learning. We have applied that always through education, specifically to special education, and that, but now we're really realizing that it's human nature to like choice, and we have an affinity to one style of learning or a combination of them. And so to give students options for how they complete and demonstrate the mastery of those critical standards. And then moving right on to the redefining ready, which is that portrait of graduate work in the career and college readiness. And so they're all intertwined. And by providing those tools, and just understanding how our brain works, we are creating an environment of social emotional learning rather than a curriculum of it, providing students with autonomy, mastery, and purpose in their role. So it all feeds together. The question has been asked, why Panorama? It is one of the, it's highly recognized. It's based on research for the surveys. It's aligned with CASEL, which again is the platform for social emotional learning that is nationwide. And we were able to tie it in with 5 labs so that the data that we have has been able to go into a dashboard. And we can then look at students' level of participation, which is part of the redefining ready. We can look at their elementary reading and math scores. We can, go individual student. Where does it appear that they need more help, or is there a collection of things that we might identify as a district we need to do differently because it's serving one group and not meeting the needs of another. So it helps us understand holistic how we need to go forward. So again, this was the priorities were determined by the staff members in November of last year. 81 staff members responded, and our goal was to identify 6 priorities. We learned about the amygdala hijack. This is the fear, fight, freeze or fawn. Last year at Summer Institute, we had Zoom with Karan Omani, who's the author of the book, and the NeuroLed champions. And fawn was a new one for us. We hadn't, as a staff, really thought of that as being a trauma response. But those are students who, you know, they're compliant, they're people pleasers. They don't want to be noticed. So they're just going to do whatever it takes and just move right along. And then the amygdala hijack is just that part in the back of your brain of just, and really recognizing that all of us go through a stage of amygdala hijack at, you know, various points. And so it could be, you know, frustrated with the dog as you leave the house in the morning, and you still need to, you can't focus as long as you're in that state of amygdala hijack. So the goal is through this neural education and through the practice that we did at Summer Institute is to help all students get to that prefrontal cortex. And it can be something as simple as, you know, bouncing a ball and just focusing on the repetition and the rhythm of that. It could be just, you know, watching this. It could be a little fidget toy. It could be putting a question up on the board. How many words can you make out of the word Penelope? It doesn't have to take away from the learning time, but it actually adds to the learning time because it maximizes the effects of the brain. So here's an example of our, to blow that up just a little bit bigger. The data that we have from Panorama, and maybe what I should do is, this would be a low test. If I could flip up the actual Panorama screen, I thought it might be, because with it, what we can see is by school, and then these across the top. So we see this is grades 3 through 5. And the areas where school safety, sense of belonging, valuing of school. This is going to start freaking out on me. And then 6 to 12. And so when we click on this, and if as board members you would like access to the Panorama, all of our certificated staff have accounts with Panorama that they can go in and view this. And so then you can click in and see just what exactly it means and how it relates to the national standards. These over here where it says employee survey, these are grades kindergarten through 2nd grade. And these are teacher perceptions. Please disregard the Eagle Sky Virtual Academy. There was miscommunication on that. It wasn't actually filled out on students, but these kindergarten through 2nd grade teachers actually filled these out based on their understanding of student awareness within classroom effort, emotional regulation. So go back to slideshow now. So then as we look a little bit more, the areas where student supports in the environment and what feedback did students have for their school. So specifically how they valued school safety, how safe they feel in the physical environment. And then again, that sense of belonging. And this top graph is grades 3 through 5. And then down here is grades 6 through 12. I don't know why it isn't showing the whole thing. So just to zoom in on that, grades 6 through 12, this is the part we couldn't see. So for example, 26% of our respondents, and we had a 69% student participation rate with this survey, answered that they felt connected. Says, how much do you matter? to others at this school, and 26% of our students felt like they mattered quite a bit or mattered a tremendous amount. When we go down to overall, how much do you feel like you belong at your school? We have 39% of respondents answered belong quite a bit, or completely belong. And these are two areas that we would, as educators, really hope that our students would have a strong sense of. We
Mhm.
want certainly, like to get 78, 90% on that. How much do you feel like you matter at school, and what is your sense of belonging?
It's a shocking flip-flop between the very first question on that page was, how often do you think about or worry about violence or whatnot at school? It's at 78%. Conversely, they don't feel like they belong.
Right.
This is tremendous.
Yeah.
In the worst of ways.
And then this one is on the other side of it. We looked at how do students perceive their own social and emotional skills and areas to look for in that. And you can also see how it compares to others nationally. They have a strong sense of well-being, 3rd through 5th grade, and then as that tapers off as they get older. So things that we need to really consider. And that we look for, again, when we give them autonomy and through the mastery-based learning and the universal design, so they have choice, and it brings relevance and gives them co-authorship for that sense of belonging as well. So here we have how often did they pay attention and ignore distractions, and these are grades 3 through 5. And our little ones, 63% of them feel that frequently or almost all the time they avoid distractions. So
That's cute.
There's probably a lot of distractions.
That's absolutely.
And then 51% of them answered quite clearly for during the past 30 days, how clearly were you able to describe your feelings? And again, at the last board meeting, when Seaweed was explaining the work that Emily has done, particularly within the elementary school. And so she was actually having classes about understanding your feelings. And so the more that we can do that and as we work through. So bringing it all together for every student in this holistic approach, it's a district and leadership team effort, and we have our 5 areas of focus there. It's staff. We do have the book study coming up. It is free. All educators, all staff. When I went to the institute at Puyallup this summer, it was in person with all the NeuroLit champions, and it was just wonderful to experience firsthand just how much there is to know. Like understanding just the brain with the reticular activating system. And we just went through the season of Thanksgiving, and we're all focusing on the things that we're thankful for. And that is so good for your brain, because your RAS, as it's called, is actually a filter that makes your brain work efficiently. And so of all the different stimuli that we have going on all the time, if you're focused on the positive, those are the things that your brain will efficiently send forward to your prefrontal cortex. And so there really is something to be said about, and for me, that was just an awakening, because I'm like, people who have their glass half empty, like, I don't get it. Their RAS focuses on that. And so it's an interesting process. We also then are involving our students and families. We'll involve them with Panorama in the future. The activities and the engagements, we see that through the star books. What a wonderful way to connect that to our community. I loved that. That was just beautiful. And we see other things that are happening within our curriculum that are connecting families and community. We also are really strong and with our McKinney-Vento and foster care, and we've had lots of community support, particularly this time of the year, with providing just gift bags and things to our students who are in need and our families who need support. The Stop Hunger that Summit Pacific is doing, and our schools are working with to help identify families of that. Even the parent classes that we're having in the evening for our ELL and ESL, and just bringing the resources to them so that they truly know that the school is a support for the family as much as it is for their student during the 6 hours in school. And then there are far more community partnerships that we have established beyond just the few that I've listed here. But these are the ones that really come to mind right now that we're working very closely with. And if, the question was asked, do all of these groups, are they starting to connect? Because we have the Blue Zone Project and things like that. And we are. And I will credit Seaweed, Michael Raines with Elevate East County, Josh Collette. He is, the two of them together are really striving to make certain that our little pockets of community support are starting to come together and collectively rally around. So our next steps are just, the patience and expanded knowledge. We talk about social emotional learning for our students and their well-being. We also need to keep that in mind for our staff and, administrators and school board members and families so that it isn't, piling more on, but that it's an organic and comfortable state of growth. It also has the challenges of it. Otherwise, we just status quo feels good. Let's just carry on. But we do intentionally want to grow. And in order to do that, it does have to challenges a bit. So this is just a little bit more about the book study. Karan will be leading that, and it is on Zoom. And neuraleducation.org is where you can register for that. And there are clock hours available. And then the implementation workshops, these are very similar to what we did for our Summer Institute. And we'll be bringing more of these again as we move forward. Right now, our primary emphasis is on the mastery-based learning, getting that organized and structured. And then we'll be looking to more of this. But these are Zoom, one Saturday, 3 hours, it's fabulous group. So if you're interested in that, you can contact me. And then just a reminder that SEL is about giving students the tools they need, that they can connect things in meaningful ways, that they find joy, they become inspired, and that they grow into expert learners. When you ask people, what do you remember from high school? It may not be that they remember something specifically, they'll remember a person because as human beings, we are built to connect with other people. And if they learn how to learn, they're still growing. And so we need to create expert learners. And we just will help them create the necessary structures in their brain because you myelinate pathways as you do things and just find their dreams and realize their own agency and autonomy so they keep looking forward. So for me, that feels like a successful graduate. So that's it. Unless you have questions. I didn't show you the dashboard. I can show you that if you like. On the 5 lab, Eric has worked hard on that. I feel like I should. We're still trying to figure out how to understand the data. This is new. So again, this is another area where Elma School District is pioneering. But we have, I can see it on here.
Wendy, can I just ask you, are those indicators, are those the indicators that we would make the assumption would relate to SEL? Like the DNF would have an impact to someone kind of went through and said, these would be the things we want to look at.
Well, I think those are all part of the, it's like behavior is an expression of the student's well-being. And so if they're struggling academically,
it may tell us.
Then it's,
right.
yes, it's to tell us something is, needs to be done differently or is missing. And so just to give us that full picture of that, it's, like chronic absenteeism is, is a symptom of something.
Right, it's telling us something.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's just,
There's 12 indicators that we could have chosen from, but they asked you to really focus, 16 or something.
Yeah.
We really focused on the ones that were internally that we can control from the school district. Because there were some like, do you feel safe at home or your home presence? And when we looked at our social emotional profile indicators, we wanted things that were really kind of coming back into the district. because we really can't control what's happening at home outside of trying to make sure there's a safe space at home. So you'll notice the questions are, does the school district feel like a safe space? Do you feel like they're learning something of meaning? And then we felt that a lot of that work was going to come full circle with a lot of our other work, like master-based learning. You've identified the standards, and now the students can become co-authors and co-creators on meeting those standards. Is this education have meaning? It aligns to the redefining ready work on what are you really here for? And what is it helping you do with the rest of your life? And are we setting you up with skills for the rest of your life? So there was some choice on our administrative staff and Wendy's team on making sure that we're trying to look at our district strategic plan holistically. And then the data we're currently loading in the individual data indicators. The redefining ready dashboard is still being built. But then the next phase is to start building intersection within those dashboards. On the cell dashboard with your DNF, on the cell dashboard with your activity engagement dashboard.
Yeah.
So those are some of the part of the data that's still being built, and that's our spring plans, is to have a redefining ready dashboard built and then moving forward on the intersections of those dashboards.
And we can either look at cohorts, or then we can go in and look at individual students or sets of data to analyze together. So the other thing that you have in front of you are just some fun little fortune cookies that when you open them up, they all have, who knew you could order fortune cookies and put your own fortune inside? You can, so those are just for you as well. So,
Thank you, Wendy, for being a part of this, immensely
my
important.
pleasure, I love it. And
And
Lisa
Lisa.
as well, she's.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Mr. Mel.
It's a lot of work.
Cheerleader for her. She says that.
He really does all the work.
The next couple of topics, pretty quick.
Take it away.
Student governing boards, we were looking at reviewing the board procedure and governing boards. This does not take board action on the procedure. Kind of gave you a draft of an updated board procedure. I'm just looking for guidance from the board on the updated draft of the board procedure on kind of really helping define the student role, how students will be reported back, and just kind of looking for some, just looking for feedback and guidance on the draft board procedure.
I feel like the only thing I saw was, hold up, I just wondered if it should specify a grade level for, I read the 4 students. But it's, and then the policy part, I think it did actually address it, but in the procedure.
The procedure, we only have it here, 2 student representatives, 1 junior, 1 senior selected by the board, but we did not define the filter.
But in the policy part, it's just please accept 4 students, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think I agree with you, Stephanie, that I wanted to see that it opened up. So we had a broader cross-section of our school than just narrowly focused on junior or senior. Because I think there could be some quality freshmen or sophomore that could come in with leadership ability, and their voices could be heard from the underclassmen as well.
Super easy. We can go ahead and change that, amend that. We can still leave it as a 2-year term of service. And then we might want to put some sort of provision that students have available transportation.
Yes.
Okay. I think we generally land on juniors and seniors. So if you want to read through these, let me know any kind of comments. Again, this does not take board action. Next, if you were ready. Later in the meeting, we're gonna have an adoption of a new revised board policy 2020. This is actually part of 2 board goals for this year, revision and evaluation of the 2000 series board policy, but also one of those revisions specifically was on our instructional materials adoption process. And the review of the instructional materials adoption process. Again, these are forms, these do not take board action. So these are the discussion items, we're just seeking feedback. And what this is just parent input on when parents make a request to have us begin reviewing the current instructional materials. If they feel that it's infringed upon the policy that we'll be reviewing later tonight. So this is just having parents say that I feel that my student needs to have access to learn this material or meet these standards in an alternative way. And it provides that student input for their request on how a student can learn those materials. Second form, sorry. would be a student request to have us reconsider instructional materials as it would come to our instructional materials adoption committee. As we build out our instructional materials adoption committee to begin reviewing things. This is in the instance that, especially anything like a social studies curriculum, times evolve, or could be a historic, an ELA curriculum. And if facts are not always this, if things are not represented now, or we're changing how things are represented, or scientific fact has been changed through new discoveries, there's a process to make a request on to have a committee review materials. It doesn't mean that it'll be eliminated just on how committee instructional materials will be reviewed. And the third one is just what we're looking for on the instructional materials reviewing process. So again, we're just looking for kind of guidance on, as we're kind of meeting two of the board goals this year on the policy review, and also on the policy review. Again, I can take comments and reflections via email from each of the board members. It just can't be to the whole group. It just needs to be specific to me as we're kind of updating our forms. But really on our instructional materials adoption process, state law does require that our community has a way to have a voice on materials that we're teaching. And it gives our community an ability to review those materials and have asked to review those materials and ensure that we're really maintaining this kind of open curriculum material for all of our students. Any questions or concerns?
The citizens' request for reconsideration. I mean, it asks good questions in the sense that I think what I like about that form is it allows a space for them to have a concern, but it also asks them to be part of the solution too. So, what would you recommend in lieu of, or, I think it's just thought provoking how the forms put together. So
I appreciate that. As we're kind of moving forward on like our master-based learning presentation, which will be coming up next, we're going to be talking about our instructional materials, like how we're aligning the standards. We're really trying to shift. And hopefully you see that when we move to board policy 2020, there's a lot of changes to that board policy, because it's really making a shift from curriculum as the book to curriculum as the standards. And there's a lot of ways in which you can meet the standard. And that review process really opens leverage on, now that we've identified these standards, how can we begin kind of adding tools to the toolbox students need? I have to reshare. Were we ready to move on to item D?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to do a quick introduction, then I'm going to turn it over. We have two groups. I have Julie Moore in marketing and his team from the elementary school to talk about how this implementation is going in our two regions. I'm just going to do a broad overview on our district master-based learning initiative. As we know, we have 5 strategic areas. We're part of the National Superintendents Association Learning 2025. This is a school districts looking to show a reinvention of what the education system should be looking like by the year 2025. This will be a report going to the United States Department of Education. We're part of an early pre-K program with our ESD 113. We are members of the State Board of Education Mastery-Based Learning Initiative, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. Our career and college readiness work is through the National Association of National Superintendents Association, Redefining Ready, our UDL work through ESD 113, and as Wendy presented tonight, our neural education work for our social emotional learning. So a lot of our foundational work is that we need to be grounded in a network with support, a support network with school districts also trying to do similar work. So then that way, as we're trying to solve problems, we have other people solving similar problems. We talk about the role of basic education. I think one big thing to kind of point out is Washington State clearly defines the role of public education. And I kind of highlighted some of these key points. It's high expectations for all students. It's that you can learn, write, communicate in a variety of ways, right? Our role to teach education communication skills, it has a broad area. Students actually have to have core concepts of math, social, physical, life sciences, think analytically, logically, but then understand the importance of work and finance and the performance of effort, decisions, and how they will affect your career and educational opportunities. So this is actually every school in Washington State by law, by statute, is supposed to be endeavoring to meet all of these goals. And that's really how we've anchored ourselves, is how are we actually helping students meet standard and preparing them for a successful and meaningful life. So when we look at this, Washington State kind of as a goal, 80,000 students will start public education in ninth grade, 25,000 will reach some sort of post-secondary education prepared for work. 31% of graduates will have some sort of post-secondary education, 69% will not. I think that's kind of concerning when you say our goal is to prepare students for successful and meaningful life, that 69% of Washington graduates are kind of left out of that zone. When we look at Elma graduates, 30% of our students pursue a post-secondary education through a two-year college, 30% will pursue a four-year university, and this is through our 2019 graduates. We do have a high retention rate for our four-year university attendees, but we have roughly 100 graduates, so it's pretty easy to make it to a specific number. Of 100 graduates, 14 will pursue a four-year university degree, and 30 will pursue a two-year technical degree. And of those 30, 70% will retain into their second year. Our completion rate, again, 100 graduates, if you go back to the year 2013, 2013 graduates complete a four-year degree, 12 2013 graduates complete a two-year degree. So about 30 out of 100 graduates will complete a post-secondary education in Elma. So really close to about the state average, right on par with where the state is. And we compare that earning level, and this is legitimate Elma graduates. So 13 years after high school, so 13 years from now, so 2010 graduates earned a four-year degree or making $54,000 a year, $39,500 for 2010 Elma graduates, and 35,000. So this is real Elma data. Like these are Elma student data. We can kind of compare that on the chart and where they're going. So why is this important when we're thinking about kindergarten to first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade? Washington State, through House Bill 1599, effectively said that we can now, students can now start meeting graduation requirements in a variety of ways. So it means that we actually have very explicit measurable skills, right? Like we can define specifically what students need to be doing. We have assessments that are actually meaningful in alignment to where the students want to go. And it's really highly standards aligned. And then we can have rapid differentiation. So that means if a student is shallow in a certain skill or needs gap in a certain skill. And again, this is House Bill 1599. This is all in Washington State law. I mean, this is what the law says we should be doing as a public education system. So it's interesting when we talk about like kind of the radicalness of mastery-based learning. On the flip side, it's really not that radical. We're just doing what we're supposed to be doing. So again, Washington State passed a WAC, administrative code, that actually gives us the flexibility to show that as students meet standard, they can earn credit. So the old way of school was you sit in an English class, semester ends, you get a half credit, year ends, you get a full credit. That's not the law. Law says students meet ninth grade English standard, they earn a ninth grade English credit. And that's really this kind of evolution on where public education is going. So the major difference between this is it's really anchoring yourselves in the difference between what students do and what students learn. And they're not the same. And Elma is really moving from a what students do district to a what students learn district. And I'm really proud. We're actually a leader in this work. There's 11 schools left in the State Board of Education Mastery-Based Learning Collaborative. There's one whole school district in the entire state of Washington. It's the Elma School District. And of the schools involved, I would say half are magnet schools. So we're the only comprehensive school, and we're the only whole school district. So even though this is what Washington State law says schools should be doing, as a district, we're the only district who, as a whole district in the state of Washington, who has made the commitment to do this work. So what does mastery-based look like, and what our teachers have been doing? As you're going to hear later, they've been mapping out the academic standards. We had a team go down to Denver and mapped out and began consolidating academic standards into what are called the critical concepts, because there's a lot of standards. There's 72 ELA standards, per grade level, and trying to do 72 different things would be a lot. So our teachers began looking at overlap and intersections so we can begin consolidating those standard alignment. So they begin working through identifying the priority standards through the critical concepts on that consolidation and identifying what we know that the students need to have done so they can scaffold it. Last week, I mean, I think Julie's gonna talk more about it later, but just last week, we've actually got these, our standards are all mapped out. We are launching a full implementation on January 23rd with East Grace Harbor High School as one of our schools that can go quickly and nimbly in a full implementation. We're getting ready to move on a full learning management system that is purely standards based. So we're moving from a grading system that has been, this is the assignment I've done, to a grading system of this is what the student has learned. And grades are based upon what the student can do. And this is really traditional of a lot of workforce programs. I mean, when you're moving in, I mean, we had a partnership with an RTC program, military training program. They call it a go, no go system. You show you got the skill, you move on to the next skill. We had a Boeing system where they do called the red light, green light system. You get the green light, move on to the next skill. It's very traditional of the workforce training systems where most workforce systems are, you show me you have the skill, you move on to the next skill. So this really brings our education system into alignment of master the skill, move on to the next skill. Don't worry, you know, if you already know it, don't waste time on relearning something you already know how to do. We want to be more efficient, nimble, and focus on the needs of the student. So we're looking at in the spring, winter, spring, we're launching our Empower Learning Management System through the elementary through both ELA and math. Our kindergarten program has already gone full launch on Badge Books, which is a holding mastery-based system. And then we're funded through grants. We received $120,000 last year, $375,000 this year, and we'll have an additional $375,000 to fund this work next year. And then again, Julie's going to talk more about this, but this would be an example of the alignment that was done last week, the teachers aligning their 8th grade standards. And then this is actually where our work plan, Harry and Mark Morris from the State Board of Education came to meet with you. He showed you where we are in our swim lanes, and this shows you how we're up to date on the work of our elementary team, our secondary team, East Grace Harbor High School team, and we're actually showing how the district is moving through our district board policies. We have board policies up for adoption tonight. So all of us, including the board, are all part of this work. So we have lots of opportunities, and with that, Mr. Who's first? Mark is first. Are there any questions on the district overview?
No, you said that really fast.
I did. I knew we have a lot on our agenda, and I felt like there's people in this room that like to see their family.
Okay, so, you know, like you said, Chris had a lot of words in a quick, short period of time. When you think about mastery-based learning, I want you to think about the 4 questions of a professional learning committee or community. And those are, what do we want students to learn? How are we going to know they've learned it? What are we going to do when they learn it? What are we going to do if they don't learn it? We have spent the last couple of years, last year and this year, focused on the first 2 questions. What do we want them to learn and how are we going to know they learned it? And we've spent a tremendous amount of time on that. Doesn't seem like a difficult task possibly, but when you have a lot of standards moving through a big system who's not used to this kind of work, it's been a difficult task. And but it's been a very rewarding task. I want you to know that. It's good for kids, and that's why we need to be doing it. Brings efficacy for them. It gives them, lets them know, be a part of the whole process, and the city deciding where they're at in the process and where they need to go in the future. With that, I just need to start by really thanking my incredible team, because they've put a ton of work into this. They're really the boots on the ground. They're the experts, the ones that know the directions we need to go. And it's really them that's doing the work. I have a teacher from every grade level, at least one from every grade level, and our group is growing. You know, early on, Chris had decided that we were going to work with the people who were ready to go, who were interested in the work, and we're going to grow it as we move forward. The interest and the goodness from the whole project will kind of seep into the rest, and that's exactly what's happening. Our team's growing as we speak. So I'm extremely proud of the work that they've done, and with that, I'm going to call up Alyssa Madsen, the kindergarten teacher, to kind of share a little bit of what they've been doing.
Okay, so Chris kind of stole a little bit of my thunder with some of his slides. I'm going to talk about that too. So when we were talking about this big empower thing, it's kind of this big scary new tool. And I think for educators, we feel like we already have so much to do and we're so busy, and that feels like a big new thing. But I think that As our team, we met last week with Peter and Copper, the more that we're learning about Empower, I feel like our anxiety is actually lowering. We're feeling better about it and it feels less scary. So this fall, we actually started with the ESD last school year, and then this summer we kind of shifted lanes a little bit and we started working with Teeter and Crocker, and we did an institute with them. And then in the fall, we started with our report cards. So we're already reporting to parents, and we're already telling them. And so what our grade level teams did was we started with our report cards and we said, what standards are we teaching and what are we teaching pretty soon coming up? Because we know that this work is like forward thinking. So not what we're doing now, but what's coming next. And then that shifts to the matrix, which is not nearly as cool as it sounds. Chris showed you that chart with all the X's on it, and that's the matrix. So what Marzano did is he said that there's no way you can teach all these standards in 180 days. But these are the most important things that these kids need to know in order to be ready for the next grade level. And he took all those standards, all the Common Cores, which were all the ones on the side, and he said, I'm going to organize these for you and tell you what you should be critically teaching to get them ready. And then he put them in these scales and these proficiency scales. And that's what the critical concepts are that our school purchased. So these are like the bells and the whistles, and it's like all the vocabulary and all the examples and all the educational jargon and all of the things that are like ed talk. And so the cool thing about it is that these are Marzano's critical concepts, but the next step for us, kind of that's where we were, this next step in December has been customizing them. And so this is the time when we get to have that autonomy, and all of our grade level teams are working with us, and at least I think one other member on our grade level team, to start customizing those scales and to turn them from Marzano scales into Elma scales. So they're no longer going to say Marzano critical concepts, it's going to be Elma critical concepts, and they're ours. And so we get to decide in kindergarten, like, what do I want my students to know? What do I want to report to my families? What do we deem as professionals with our certificates? Like, we're the people who are the content experts, right? So what do we feel like our kids need to know to be ready to go? And so with that, we met last week too, to do a little more training with revising those scales. And so each grade level team focused on third quarter, like what are we mostly going to be teaching? And a lot of us landed in our O&A standards, our operations and algebraic thinking. We did math to start with. A little more black and white. And so each grade level team has 4 to 5 scales that they're working on revising over the course of December. And then we'll hand those over to Teeter and Copper at the beginning of January. And then they'll work with Eric to do like all the magic mojo things to put them into Empower. And then at the end of January, the 30th, when second semester launches, is when the MBL team leaders would start using Empower also in our classrooms with the scales that we revised thus far. And then over the course of the spring and the summer, we will continue to revise those skills.
Alyssa, do you feel like, for the most part on the revisions, are they pretty mild?
I think it depends a little bit, and Dell's going to show you an example of what we bought versus what 5th grade did. So you'll get to see an example of that.
Okay.
So putting MBL into practice, I brought some examples of some badges. I know Chris has seen them before, but here's some live books from my kids in my classroom and what they're doing. And so what kindergarten did this summer, and this is kind of like the bridge between early learning and with the national based learning work. So okay, so in our badge books, kindergarten this summer, we went through all of our standards for ELA, math, speaking, and listening, and we decided this is what we want our kids to know, what we want them to focus on. And I told my husband it's kind of like the glorified sticker book, but it's more than that for kids. It's how they can take ownership over their learning. And so kindergarten team has had a lot of discussions about how we're using it, and we are in different places, I would say, and having like kind of brainstorming sessions on how are you using it, how am I using it, how can we use it better together. And so in my classroom, like the front page, like a quick look page, and so I have like different colors for different quarters, so that's how my brain likes to work. And the parents can kind of see their progress per quarter. I think it was a really powerful teaching tool at conferences to communicate with families about kindergarten. It's not just that time anymore, and we do lots of things. And so these are all the things that your kinders need to know to get ready for 1st grade. And I think it was pretty eye-opening for parents how many things we did. I think we have 82 badges that we started with this year, and when we were creating it, we were like, oh, we're going to start small, and this is what we came up with for starting small. So there's that. But anyway, so our kids get to do it. My kids are really excited about it when we're doing calendar and we're like counting. I'm like, "Oh, did you know what? You get to earn a badge for sending this song back to me. If you take out by tens, you get to earn your badge." And so I think that it's a way that they can kind of take some ownership over their own learning. And in Empower later on, the parents and kids will have access to it to see like their standards mastery and their growth and access it, but littles can't really do that. Like my 5-year-old can't go onto the computer and say, "Mom, we're making 10, and this is how far I've grown, I'm at a 2 right now." And so for this, it's a more developmentally appropriate way for littles to be able to access their learning. The video that Mark is gonna have us watch is about kindergarten mastery-based learning and what it looks like in a kindergarten classroom. And then after that video, then Dell's gonna take it.
Where they stand, you ask them, "What do you recognize in literacy?" They can say, "Oh, I'm doing syllables right now," or "I don't need to do my letters anymore because I know them already."
So me and my friend Quinn are in this group, and the D's are in this group folder, and those are the papers that we're working on.
We do a lot of stations. We do literacy stations and math stations, and in that they have a group with me, and those are fluid groups that I move around quite often. And they have a target time where they work at their own individual learning target. And then they have a practice time around the room where they kind of do that kind of spiral activities to keep old content fresh.
What we have in here is like choices that we can take out at target time. And then have like this really fun game apps like building your caliper, and these are the words. And these are word families, and we build a caliper with 3 pieces, its head, and then 2 body pieces.
They know exactly what to expect and know where they need to be and where to get their materials from. So they're able to grab onto it and move through their targets at a pretty independent pace.
When I reach my target, it makes me really happy because when I reach my target, I like earn circles and stuff, and that's what. And then the sparkles come home with me, and then I get a new target.
It is empowering, and it's just so much fun to see the kiddos get excited about their learning. And one kiddo might be excited because they finally learned the letter M. Whereas you have another kid who's excited because they wrote 3 sentences, and they can be excited at the same time in the same classroom, and that's just so neat to see because no one's waiting, but yet nobody also feels bad that they're behind.
So, one of the things that holds schools up is that teachers have a difficult time sometimes releasing the learning to kids and putting them in charge of the learning. And the argument's always been made that kids can't do that. I need to be more in control. We just saw a 5-year-old in control of her education, control of the targets she's meeting, and control of so many things. So if a 5-year-old can do it, 17-year-old can do it.
Shocking how well she communicated and just was like a little boss. Like she just knew it, right? Like that's so great.
And Elle's gonna go through some examples of what our work looks like right now.
Hi, so you asked the question about the purchase bars on the critical concepts and us doing some editing tonight. So one we just did with my team just this last week. We in operations and algebraic thinking for 5th grade, it really is algebraic thinking. And one of the targets we were looking at was being able to evaluate expressions using order of operations. So the original has a whole bunch of stuff about the distributed property, commutative property, and associative property, which we actually do in a different place. We don't do that in the evaluating. That happens way before that we get to evaluating. So that is moved over into our multiplication and division, addition, subtraction of decimals. So those are crossed off on ours, and ours is absolutely focusing on just the skills it takes, understanding what the parentheses and brackets and all of those, and being able to explain why you're doing that part first. So we cleaned it up. And our target and our twos, the foundational skills, explicitly match the target. We got rid of some of the other things that really didn't belong in this place. We have them somewhere else. Another example that's not up there. Exponents has its own category in the critical concepts, but in 5th grade, the only place we do it is in writing numbers in expanded form. It doesn't have anything greater than that, and it isn't in our evaluating expressions. So we have moved that whole category into reading and writing numbers.
Okay.
So we've moved them where we're actually teaching them, so those foundational skills will be a part of those assessments. So the properties are not being assessed with this, they're assessed somewhere else. So we're kind of cleaning it up. It has to make sense to us in order for us to help it make sense to them.
Right.
You know, so that's kind of the work that we've just done.
And I want you to know, as she talks about that, that we're just not like choosing the ones that we, get rid of these, keep these.
Right.
We've done a crosswalk work across what our state assessment is asking students to know and understand as well, to make sure that we're addressing the concepts that they're going to be needing to complete on state assessments.
I will say there's nothing that's been gotten rid of. We have moved things, but it's all still there.
Okay, I think that's maybe where my brain was going. I'm like, well, not that Marzano is like the end all be all, but there's a lot of smart people that went into that work. So then
Absolutely.
I would want to be clear. And I would like to state explicitly that it's not like the arbitrary of, oh, well, this is what these teachers, that this isn't personality driven, or I like these concepts and these are my favorite ones to teach. So we're gonna make sure.
No.
And I trusted that, but I think for all 13 people that might be listening, it would be important to know that there was a
Yes,
very
no.
vetted
So-
process.
In fact, we're doing the opposite, if you want to know the truth.
Exactly. So we added 3 vocabulary words that were not anywhere in this.
Okay,
For the next part of this, it was plotting points on a coordinate plane and doing T-charts. Nowhere did they say that the kids needed to know linear. Well, if you're going to explain the pattern, you probably need to know the word linear.
okay.
So we're actually probably adding more, I think, than, so.
And it's making us standards focused.
Right.
So we're taking out a lot of the, like the, can call pet peeves of certain teachers. And you can remember my class, I like genetics. So guess what? We spent a lot of time on genetics. Now, using this method, you have standards to focus on, all of the standards, not just the ones you like.
So any new teacher coming in,
Absolutely.
we have a new 4th grade teacher and here it
That's
is.
really what Empower, we're going
Right.
to talk about, in a minute, is really about.
And for our 5th grade team, as we're doing each of these, we're doing this, and then we're immediately building the assessments to go with it. Then once we have the assessments, it's what resources do we have? And if we have holes, we need to fill them.
I think the other thing with revising that we talked about last week at our meeting also was that Marzano, when he puts them up together, our standards into the scales, like some of our skills in kindergarten have 3 different standards built into one scale. And so as our team, we get to decide, do we want to keep them together in one scale, or do we want to keep 2
Isolate.
together and put 2 in its own scale? So no standards are leaving, but how we're arranging and how they're being put together.
Thank you.
So a
That's good.
student can be proficient in one
Mhm.
without having to be proficient in all 3 to feel good about themselves, if that makes sense.
And the question, I like looking at the bad books and stuff. So part of the assessment part, how many times does a student have to demonstrate, a certain skill set, before they get their sticker, or does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think this year, I would say that that's like a learning process for our team. I think that that's what Empower will do. Because in Empower, when you put in your data points, then it's gonna go ahead and do that. Right now, we have a tool called ESGI, and we use that, and it has like little circles, and so when they fill it up and they master that standard, it's correlating a lot to their badge. And so that in ESGI is very badge specific. So I have one for like lowercase letters, lowercase letter name, segmenting, first sound, medial sound, last sound. It's very like standard specific. And so I think with Empower, I'm looking forward because I think that the hardest part about finding books for me this year is that now after we're in groups and I'm taking my evidence and I'm got my sticky notes all over the place, then I'll go back through and I'll highlight my books. And then the next day, my parent helper or my parent will come and help the kids pull and put their badges on, what they earned. And so for me, then I'm like re-going through the books, like, okay, who doesn't have this yet? Who doesn't have this yet? And I think that Empower is gonna help me desegregate that data a lot faster. So that's how I see it impacting me.
And upper grades, so it depends on the skill. Some of these really complex math things, you know what? Show me a couple times, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty complicated, if you can explain that, yeah, you really do know it. I've got lots of students who love to be the helpers, and I will stand back there and listening to them explain it to another kid, and I'm like, oh, yeah, they got it.
Right.
Yeah, no, mark them down, they got it. So.
Because I just didn't want to see, it's easy to fake it till you make it type thing.
No.
And I want to make sure that they have to show a
Yes, and it has to be multiple times.
understanding and
I
demonstration.
think kindergarten has more standards than anything else. Kindergarten has different categories of standards, like a lot of our math standards, even our counting cardinality, nobody else has those standards. So there's only one way to count by 10 to 100, and if my friends can do that for me with some gusto and some boom, like boom, they got it, they can do it. But like when we're making 10, last week we were making 10, they can sing the song, they can tell me 2 ways, they're rocking it. This week we did it, and I was like, oh buddy, okay, not yet, kind of thing. So I think it kind of depends, like Kendall said, on what standard it is. Because some that are more straightforward, like very black and white, it's like a yes or no, and then other standards and then something.
But also in kindergarten, most of those skills are foundational, so they're gonna come up at the end. They're gonna need to show, they're gonna need to use those for proficiency in another standard.
As a building block to move on
Yeah.
and build upon their education. Right. Thank you.
You have another question? Next. So on our report cards, we're gonna need to be making some changes. Right now, we just have a 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to need to have the halves in between that. One big benefit of that is you could hang out at a 2 for a really long time before you actually make it to that standard. If we can have those halfway marks, kids are gonna go, oh yeah, I did show growth, I did improve, and they're ready to take that next step. If you're bogged down for an eternity at that 2, you're not going to ever feel like anything's happening. So we need to get rid of the language of grades. She made a great statement. A 2 is you're not halfway there. That's not what that means. And these do not equate to any kind of letter grades at all. This is the standard. This is the measurement. Have you met it or not? To get the 2s, you have to have all these foundational skills. You have to know those skills to be able to perform this skill at the 3. So those foundational skills have to happen first. And so the kids are starting to see those as a ladder. Those are the steps that I have to be able to do before I can go, oh yeah, let me show you this. And there are some baby skills that happen. Math can be very segmented. You could be learning place value and knowing what the place value names are, but you don't know why you're doing it until all of a sudden you're rounding and you're given a place value and you have to round to that. That was one of those baby skills that you had to have to be able to round to any given number and give it a place value. So they're starting to see that, oh, I've got all of these, I'm ready to assess. Let me try for that 3. So they're seeing those as little steps to get to that 3. And they're letting you know, I'm ready. I'm ready, let me try that. Okay, let's go. Which is kind of why 5th grade is trying to build those assessments ahead of time. So we are ready for that.
And it's a wonderful support step in between those levels because you say, you know, you can get bogged down in the mire. It's supporting that emotional part of them too. I think that's wonderful.
Yes. Nice. All right, so this happened at our institute. So it's this big idea, mastery-based learning, and there's a lot of teacher jargon that goes into all of this. Here's the bottom line. How would you explain this to the parent at the grocery store? Okay, remember when we went to school and you took that math test and you failed it? Then the next chapter still dealt with that stuff and you're still completely lost. But you know what? Class just keeps moving on without you. And most likely, you're repeating that class. That's not happening anymore. You're going to know it. It isn't a, you didn't do great, we're moving on without you. It's, no, this is material you need to know. What are the next steps? What do I need to do to help you get there? This didn't work, let's try this. Oh, you didn't get it this way, let's try this. Let's go to some more hands-on. Let's go even farther back. It's spending time with those kids, making sure they actually know this material. It isn't, we're moving on. They feel good about it. They get excited about it. They're thrilled about it. And you've got some of these kids that have gone through school and they've always been passed by and they've never gotten to feel that I can do it. We're seeing kids going, oh, I did it. Look, Ms. Hook, I finally did it. Yes, you did. Let's go. What do you want to try next? And they're ready. They're eager. They're excited.
So where are we headed next? You can see we're enthusiastic about this. So our plan is winter, we're gonna do a soft and power launch, and what we mean by that is we have a lot of teacher leaders that are working through this first, those that were the first excited, and the ones that have been involved in the work. Thank you, by the way, for sending a few of us to the Marzano Institute. That was a great learning experience, and one of the things that he said over and over and over again was that the proficiency scales, what you just heard Andel talking about, is the cog to the whole mastery-based concept, learning concept. And if you don't get those right, nothing's gonna be right. So take your time, do it right. And so what we're doing, as you can imagine, we're just starting with math. We've got ELA next. We've got all the different grade levels to go through. We're gonna spend some time, if you look this spring and summer, continuing to work on those revisions and doing some vertical alignment. Our team purposely chose one domain in math to start with so that we could, as a team, learn how to do the vertical alignment piece before we turn everybody in the building loose on that. It's going to be important that our leaders understand the Empower system, understand the proficiency scales, and can explain it to their teammates.
And that's what you chose, the algebraic.
Yeah, that's why we did.
All right, that's
Yep.
making sense.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then fall of 2023, we're gonna start utilizing that Empower tool. We'll have our scales in, our standards, our scales, and we'll be ready to start developing activities and assessments that can go with those. Mastery-based learning, it takes into consideration that not all students learn at the same pace or in the same way. So we're going to provide them with multiple opportunities to show us proficiency in multiple different ways. That's going to be when it really gets exciting. That's when our professional learning communities in the schools can really be sitting down and talking about the third and fourth question of the professional learning community. What are we going to do if they know it? And what are we going to do if they don't? What are our next steps? So.
No, they didn't. They're live books.
Yeah.
They're not empty. I told Greg there's only 100.
So again, this is a district-wide adoption. We have it broken out in two teams. Mark has been leading our pre-K 5 team, and Julie and Sunshine have been leading our secondary team.
And it was sweater weather day. So I am sporting the Be Your Elf, just Be Your Elf. So thank you for your humoring my attire from today. But my students liked it, so it was good. So I'm just here to report a little bit on the secondary element. It's kind of funny, as you said, he went through it really fast. And then the elementary hit on some of those key targets again, and you're gonna hear some of them again from me. So even though he went through it fast, by the third time, you should know it and be able to test. And we'll see how you do on the mastery base. Amygdala hijack.
One for three.
I see I'm not getting any sad book stickers today.
Don't be sad, Ryan. You can get to 2.5.
And it's kind of funny because as Mark said, when you talk about professional learning communities, the first question is this, and what do we want our students to know and to be able to do? And so that is one of the things I wanted to bring forward is that's where our secondary team has been. The elementary has been working on the standards base for a little while longer than the secondary level. Last year when we started this, it was kind of like we were on a cruise ship and everybody had to jump in the water, and those who could swim, and well, nobody can swim. So we're just all out there flailing and drowning it. At least that's what it felt like. It has been a really large learning curve. We have attended, we've done a whole bunch of meetings. I can't tell you how many, and I mean that truthfully. They've been with our community members in the state board, which he mentioned in his presentation. It's been us as a team. It's been us with the ESD. It's been us with Peter Crocker. It's been, actually, there's 4 groups, I think, 3 or 4 groups in the mastery-based learning community that we're doing. And it's almost truly about once a week that they're spending 2 extra hours or more on mastery-based learning. So it's been a very big push in there, and trying to figure out for us at the secondary level, where to even get started swimming, if you will. And this is where we came to. What do we want our students to know and be able to do? And that led us to this next statement, and you've heard, or might have heard this, about priority standards. We need to select our priority standards. Chris mentioned a number, but the state puts out standards for content areas and grade levels, okay? And there are a ton of them in there, but they really don't expect us to learn, our students to learn all of those standards. That's not been an expectation, or at least they don't assess us on all the standards that they put out for those areas, okay? So we've been directed or guided that we should pick our priority standards. Well, then we have to ask the question, what does that mean? And when you put a bunch of adults in a room, you're going to find a lot of differing opinions. In fact, some will say, well, they gave us all these standards, we need to do them all. We finally came up and was provided with, as we were getting there on our own, a definition for priority standards. And I broke it down just a little bit here. Priority standards are a carefully selected subset of the total list of the grade specific and course specific standards within each content area. So that key word in there is a subset. And it's this subset that students must know and be able to do at the end of each school year. Okay, and in order to be prepared, why is to be prepared for the standards for the next grade level or course. So I know it sounds kind of funny, but getting to know that and what that means and apply that is a key factor. And we've taken time to get there. It's been a journey. So our next question is, which standards do we prioritize and why? That's been a big deal. Why are we wanting to teach these standards, and what is the grounds that we can talk about doing that? So here are some 4 guiding factors to help us in selecting our priority standards. So the first one is endurance, that it is a standard or a skill that is going to be lasting beyond one grade level or course on concepts and skills that are needed in life, like proficiency in reading informational text and being able to write effectively in a variety of purposes. We all agree we don't all have to write 5-paragraph essays all the time, but we do have to write reports when we're in work, or we may need to write a letter for some purpose. So there's a variety of reasons to be able to write effectively. Another one is leverage, that is the crossover applications. Can they use this in more than one academic area or even beyond that? One of the easily point out is graphs. making them, interpreting them, making inferences from them goes across math, science, social studies, probably even English when you're looking at the informational piece, being able to analyze that and write about it. So it's across the curriculums, if you will. Third one is readiness for the next level of learning. Is this a prerequisite skill? That was brought up in the elementaries, things that are needed to enter the next grade level or the next course, essential skills that are ready for, or get us ready for their future success, get them ready. And finally, we have the external exams, concepts and skills that students most likely encounter on standardized tests. We have SBATs, we have college entrance exams, the SAT, the ACT and ACT and SAT, as well as the AccuPlacer. We have the military entrance exam, the ASVAB, different set of skills, but are we helping our kids get there? We have occupational entrance exams. Okay, so those are 4 critical focus points, but we had a little bit more on criteria that we have been considering. So we're looking at the secondary level, what are graduation requirements and pathways, and how do our standards support those? What does the portrait of an eagle want us to look at? And our college and career and college readiness, what do we need to look at for those? We've been guided that we need between 10 and 14 standards. That would be an estimate of what we should teach each year in a course or content area at a grade level. And we need to know what it is that the very basic of our students can find success in. And that is dictated to us through the law, I'm gonna say Ames, did I get it right? And they have, I believe it's 5 essential standards that all students should be able to do and be able to achieve. So we've incorporated those as well. So this is the criteria that the secondary has been using to try and find our way through all of our standards to pick what are our priorities, okay? And narrowing them down between 10 to 14, which in the middle is 12, good, thanks.
Oh, I'm like, are you trying to?
In the middle, that's the middle of 10 and
Give me
14.
that. Okay.
12.
I'm like, I don't know.
Okay, so here's the process and where we are. So I know it's a little bit of small print, so I can help with this. The first step is to identify, first of all, we are starting with English and math. Okay, those 2 content areas, that was kind of a district decision. And so that's where our focus is. So our first step is to identify ELA and math priority standards. And the next step following that is to identify the corresponding or correlating critical concepts. And that's where we are right now. We had a work day last week in which we were able to bring all of this prep work to get to this real functional day, actually. After that, then we will begin to review and adjust the corresponding proficiency scales, which is what Andel shared. So we're not quite there yet. We're still back here on the prioritizing our standards, but we've made great progress there. After we've done the proficiency scales, then we'll get to load them into Empower, which is again, something that Andel shared about that Eric's going to help us with. Or he's out, Eric, stay in the room. After that, we'll start piloting with Empowered with some targeted, just as the elementary has, and then go back, review, reflect, revise, and make adjustments. So where are we? Well, as of last week, the 6th in math on our selecting our priority standards, 6th and 7th grade are mostly done. The 8th grade is done. And the 9th through 12th have identified standards, but now are needing to really go back and focus more on the prioritization. And I'm going to show you a photo of what their work was looking like. Okay. In ELA, again, 6th and 7th are mostly done. 8th is done. 9 through 10 are done. And that's where the SBAC assessment kind of winds up for English. And so the 10th or the 11th and 12th grade, that's a more diverse direction for our students to be going and kind of their career or college readiness and how do we support them. So there is more work that's going to be focused on that, breaking out of different directions. We're glad to be to the 9-10 right now. Okay. The 6th and 7th and both math and English. The members, again, as was brought forth, we brought on these people who wanted to be on board. The 2 teachers who are working in those areas are both the 8th grade teachers. So we didn't have the 6th and 7th grade teachers in this particular group, but they're taking it back to them to get the last little pieces on that. It's pretty close. Okay, so this is what our workday looked like. The top photo is, I know it's far off, but it's where we laid out the standards by their numbers. We have included, I believe, the blue were the law aimed ones, and then the green ones are the ones we came back in and added. So we have those basic ones that we knew were essential to have in there, which helps us support all learners. The lower one is the photo of the math standards. Well, there's a line there in the middle of the photo. The ones above are the middle school standards, and then the ones below are the high school ones. And so they have some more sorting out to do in alignment with it, but we've got those to that point. Whew, that was a lot. The item on the board, or the table on the board, shows, if you'll see, there are 12 boxes up above. Those are the selected 8th grade English standards. Okay, those are remember I said we needed between 10 and 14. These are the 12 for the 8th grade ELA standards. Those are the ones we chose. Down in the bottom row, those are the critical concepts that are corresponding to those standards. And so those will be the ones we're going to be working on and pulling those proficiency scales. So each grade level, course level, has a table like this that they'll be putting their standards in, so we know which ones are prioritized, and then the corresponding and correlating concepts that go there. The matrix that was shown, that is Marzono's, and it's got it for every standard. So we're pulling our information off of that and putting it in this useful tool that can be forwarded on to our staff members and readily used. Questions so far? Okay. I said we were working on math and English. This is what happens next, and this is very broad in the idea of it, but the other content areas, which would be science and social studies, well, Marzano does not have as great a proficiency scales in the science and social studies areas. They have some, but they're not as well developed, okay? So keep that in mind as I go through this. So we've seen how English and math have got their priority standards now selected. The other areas will start doing that. They're going to start looking at what their priority standards will be. Now that we found the process, now that we found the criteria, they can start to sort through it and work their way through that. And then they will start unpacking those standards. What do they really mean? What do they really need to show? And find that in what the corresponding critical concepts. And then they have to develop more of the proficiency scales. They're not as ready-made as the English and math that we purchased. And we go back through upload and pilot and revise and redo and repeat. What is that? Lather, rinse, repeat. Yeah, that's it. See, I knew somebody would get that. So what's next for us at the secondary level? Well, we have a couple meetings coming up in which we will do some more identification and cleanup on those standards, and then prepare to do the January 23rd late start and lead our teammates into their jumping off boat.
Wow.
And learning how to swim a little bit with us.
That is the whole district where we are on our mastery-based learning, and it takes you up until last Thursday. Questions?
No, I was writing those down and then that answered my question. So.
And it kind of brings full picture too with the data Wendy's pulled out of our panorama work
Mhm.
on how we're setting the stage for students to have ownership. So this
Mhm.
mapping out the standards, the alignment, right? How we created a system where the students own their learning and can grow from their learning.
Mhm.
And all the district initiatives are interconnected, and we're really hoping to kind of see, like, we don't have these siloed strategic areas.
Right.
Every strategic plan correlates, moves another one.
I did want to say one last thing, and I apologize because it's not quite on the slide, but we did see the video of the kindergarten doing the mastery-based learning, and we don't have a lot of that for the high school level, or even it's less at the secondary level. But I do want to say I have a person who I have frequent contact with who is doing mastery-based in pre-calculus and calculus at a school in Idaho, and the impact on his students is phenomenal. He says his students know more already than they usually do at this point, and they have a better understanding and are moving forward, which why I'm saying is that we have some other experiences. It's just that it's such a rarity to have the higher level classes in this type of program that we're in the research of it. We are the research of it. But we do have some that we're connecting with, and good stuff is happening with doing this process. It's a good place to go.
Indeed.
I'm done.
Any questions for any of our teams?
I mean, I got a whole lot from that, and I took a lot of things away from it. And so don't take this wrong, but Andel, your definition to the general population that this is best by far I've heard, most relatable way to say it to someone. And so if we can do that and then do that and then do that, that's great. So thank you, everyone. That's I know it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of hours, and it's a lot of all of it.
Truthfully, I mean, the high school may not be there yet, but as these kids go up, they're going to demand it of their teachers.
Yeah,
They are.
I hope.
They are absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely going to demand that. And they're not gonna put up with anything else.
And interestingly enough, Andel you guys were talking about the alignment, the vertical alignment. And in our meeting on Thursday, we were talking, we need to connect with the 5th grade so that we're vertically aligned with them as well. And we talked about linear. It was like, she's mentioning linear, and it's like, yeah, we were right there.
I think it's a wonderful, I believe would be a byproduct, which will be wonderful. It will be great to see. I think a byproduct will be the maturity of students who has to come along, right? I'm excited about it.
You aren't going to be able to be the fly in the corner and just give up.
I think the other biggest piece that elementary keeps coming back to is it's not just about students, it's also about families. And the other big part about mastery-based learning and standards-based grading is that letting the kids know this is what we're learning and this is what we're doing next. So it's about educating families. That's kind of about where Endel's kind of analogy came from, right? Because if you fail your test and get a 0, then you have basketball practice, you didn't study, then you study the next time you get 100%, now you only have a 50. And you're struggling the whole rest of the quarter to get your grades up. That's not what mastery-based learning is anymore. So I think that that's a way for parents to kind of understand. I know at kindergarten in our walk-in meetings, every single year, we talk about so we do, standards-based grading, that's what they mean. When you get your report card, you're not gonna see letters and you're gonna get numbers. This is what these numbers mean. And a 2 is okay. When you see that in January, a 2 is okay. A 2 means we're still tracking along and doing what we need to do. So I think a lot of this work also is not just about our students, it's about our families too, and how we're bringing them along in this work process.
Good point.
And we're not excited for it either.
I just want you guys, some of the ahas for me, your hardest work is still probably yet to come because it's actually developing the meaningful activities. Like we can see it in kindergarten and go, oh, this is a really great way to practice the skill. It's a really different concept. Obviously, I still believe it can happen, but to have meaningful instructional activities that engage students is not going to just naturally come out of the textbook, and it's not going to come out of a Chromebook. And so I want to commend whoever's going to be doing it. I know hard work is still to come on that. And I suppose it means I would think in a lot of our classes, we don't have appropriate instructional materials to really assess at the levels that we would need to do for the scope and sequence would be my assumption. I think part of this also, it sure creates I appreciated, Julie, those 4 kind of initial criteria. I'm going back to like my early years truly as a special ed teacher here in the district. And what I would have done to been able to have a robust, but meaningful conversation with the teacher, like, so what is essential? No, actually, everything you're gonna do is not essential. Like I have a kid who we got to get the most essential skills out of the class. And for a teacher to already know going into it, this is what's essential, I think would have saved countless hours as the support team, but also just for that student. So, so thank you for sharing that.
It kind of changes and Andell hit it, and this kind of closes this. You have the old system with the bell curve, and you have your ABCD students. And then you have kind of like how the rest of the world is gone. I don't know how many of you flown on an airplane. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not really great knowing that my pilot got a D on landing, but his takeoffs, he got an A, and it averaged out, so he's got the B average. I mean, I'm not okay with that. Are you okay knowing your pilot got a D? I don't know if you've had family members go in for surgery. I don't necessarily want to know that my doctor might have had a D in the sutures. You know, that's just not okay for me, you know? Like there's some things that are just D grades are not okay. And honestly, a lot of the world has evolved where D grades are not okay, right? If you haven't mastered landing, we're not taking you up in the airplane to land until you can show you can land, until you can land. Because it has to be an A, and every kid has to have an A, and everybody has to have it all the way, you know, everyone needs to be able to get these skills. And this idea of A, B, C, D and moving on with the 60% being good enough, and our mind is not good enough. Because I don't want to get in that airplane, I don't want to go under that knife, I don't want to have that surgery. There's a lot of things in my life, and D is not okay, so why is it okay for our students?
Right, and on the other side, I want to know that my pilot actually got an A out of the class because they actually learned that they showed the competency for the skills of landing, not for, I'm gonna be facetious, but how well they could do the artwork of a report, right? So I mean, I think there's strong petition to both sides of that, and that mastery base, I think you guys addressed that, of like making sure we have assessments that really target the skills we're targeting.
That's just agreed.
Okay. I want to make sure everybody has their shot. I want to thank you guys so much. I know Mark was hoping to celebrate his anniversary tonight.
I was gonna ask if we could be dismissed.
No, that's right.
Want to take a
I know we
cookie?
have a guest,
Like a
we have a
fortune
public
cookie.
comment. The next 2 discussion items are very, very short, I promise you. So we can get our discussion items through and then we can move on. The next item is discussion item on board policies 2005.
Bye.
Happy anniversary.
Next on the docket I have is
years.
Congratulations.
Wow.
2420 grading progress reports, board policy 2023 lesson plans, and board policy 2422 homework. Again, these are just here for you to access. We'll send out, same process. If you can send me a week leading to January, some proposed changes. And then we'll begin kind of going through the discussion items on some changes based upon your feedback and comments.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted to kind of go through and kind of have some ideas now, or if you just want to kind of reflect at home and send those in.
I think we can reflect and send. We'll just remember that when we send them, please everybody BCC with board members if you need to, other than direct Chris.
Perfect. All right. So those are the next 3 we will be working on. Next is the last 3 we did. I do not have that board policy ready for approval. This is the current Elma School District Board Policy 2000. I would like to make a recommendation that we don't actually do the final adoption until we get near the end of the actual full-on adoption process for 2000s. And the rationale is this first paragraph really needs to be written by the board. This first paragraph really should be representative of the mission statement and the vision of the Elma School District. Everything else kind of really lines us to that RCW 28A on the purpose of public education. But that very first one should be representative of, we really should take some time to write this very first one before we move to final approval. And I'd like to recommend following this meeting, we send out a new copy to everyone. You can have involvement on this when we discuss I'll send out a copy of the portrait of the graduate.
Okay.
And have you a chance to kind of look at the portrait of the graduate, what our community says that are the key values that we'd like to have in our students as we get ready to draft that first paragraph. But this one is close to go, but I'd like to make sure that we really spend some in-depth time on that first paragraph.
Okay.
And with that, we are to public comment.
Okay, so we're to communication and comments, ETO, EESP, ECOPA, admin. And then we have persons to be heard. We have Mike Williams. Good evening, sir. You have the floor.
And unfortunately, you picked the longest board meeting ever to
Ever.
have to wait for, so thank you for being.
Cloudy, that was a lot of information.
In my apology, we actually moved the discussion items after, the public comment after the discussion items, just so our community could hear that if you wanted to comment on it.
It was a lot of good information. So I didn't understand some of it, but good information. So, anyway, I'm here tonight to talk about the, you guys are going to vote on a bond issue tonight. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents out there. And I tell you a little bit about me. For a couple of years ago. I don't have any kids. I do have kids, but they're grown. My grandkids are through college or in college. So I don't have any students in the school system. So my desire of being here is to support the community. I raised my kids in a small community. Making Elma my retirement home. My plan when I moved here was to get involved in the community. This is one way I feel I can do it. I apologize. I had a tube shoved down my throat last week and it's playing with me a little bit.
Oh.
So I had back surgery a week ago. So yeah, I thought they needed to put a tube down my throat apparently. So anyway, I attended all of the meetings that were held and I have a construction background, 50 years in the construction industry. So I'm not new to what you guys are trying to do here. I've been around it and I will commend the board on up to this point. I think you guys have done a great job in how you've approached the project. I think you hired a great consulting firm. I was pretty impressed with how they handled the whole scenario and the situation. Not a public speaker, so forgive me if I'm a little nervous standing up here, but I used to tell me that at work all the time when I had to present it to some of these jobs. I'm not very good at it, but
You're doing just fine.
but anyway, and I'm for the project, so, and that's why I'm here. And you guys have paid for this. One of the things that I feel strongly about is you hired the consultant. I think they did a great job. I think we came up with the best viable plan for the area. And could you cut it back? Probably. But I think the plan as a whole is what the community needs. And with that said, I think in all fairness to the public who paid for that consultation and that information, that we should have every right to vote on good, bad, or indifferent. If it passes, great, we move forward. If it doesn't, then I hope you guys have some kind of a contingency plan because things don't always pass. And if it doesn't pass, you're still gonna need schoolrooms, and temporary buildings are not the answer. They never are. So they end up being permanent structures. That's not what's in the best interest of the community or the kids. So I'm a taxpayer. It's going to hit me pretty hard. I know what the rate is, and it's not going to be an easy pill to swallow. And it's going to be tough to get through, I believe, because as we all know, our assessed value what happened to that this year. So I think we're just kidding ourselves if we don't think that double whammy. People are going to take a look at that. And then there's some other political stuff that I know nothing about an old stadium being torn down that I've just heard. Whatever.
So, some of the advantages of doing it now are the dollars, time is money. And you already do way too much that costs don't really help. So you've had an aggressive schedule up till now. You need to stay with that aggressive schedule, I believe, for the betterment of the community, best bang for your buck. Because construction costs, I still work part-time as a consultant. And I'm doing $100 million job at the airport right now. It's crazy what's happening in the industry, not only with construction costs, but procurement, which affects the time of the job. And we're looking at a year just to get HVAC. So, that's a huge impact on your scheduling of the project. So I'd like to stay involved in this all the way through and in one form or another, help any way I can. There's some different procurements done, different ways to procure jobs that might save you some money down the road. Unfortunately, they don't have 3P financing here in Washington. It's another form of procurement. Oregon's just started it, and Washington's looking at it, but it's not available here. But it's a way to get in the door cheap and get the job done, and you ultimately pay for it. But it's just not available here yet. I don't know what the time is for it to be available. So, I'd like to ask the board if they do have a contingency plan. If the vote happens to be no, or the bond doesn't pass.
We can't answer questions directly, because we have to advertise it, but I can
Fair
say,
enough.
I think that same question will probably come up under new business. So I think that'll probably be part of the new business conversation. So we can't answer your direct question, but I'm confident your question is going to be answered later in the night.
Okay. Anyway, that's really all I got to say. I'm just here as a supporter. And I'll get out there in the community, do what I can to sell the project. It does move forward. I was just elected to the chamber board, so I'm getting hectic there. So anyway, I can help. So.
Mike,
Thank you very much.
Mike, I really, really appreciate your time you spent this summer on that long range facilities committee and your commitment. And I really hope that having surgery, I hope you heal nicely.
Yeah, it's been a tough year, but I lost my wife of 41 years 6 months ago too. So.
Well, we're happy that you're here to be a family for us.
It's all good.
Thanks, Mike.
It's all good. One foot in front of the other and try not to trip.
Thank you again
Thank you
so
so
very
much.
much.
I'll sit through the rest. of the meeting.
Okay.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My dog's waiting for me at home. Thank you.
Can we interest you in a fortune cookie or regular quick?
We have one other public comment. It's from Julie Roop. However, she had to be out this evening while she's supporting the wrestling duel that's happening tonight. So I'll read her letter. It says, "Dear school board directors, I am writing this letter to persuade you to ask the taxpayers to approve a bond. Most districts in Grace Harbor have a bond in place to serve the needs of their district. There are only 4 other districts in our county that do not currently have a bond. Our district enrollment has increased 3% each year on average over the last 5 years, with an increase of over 100 students from 2021 to 2022 to the 2022-23 year. Our current facilities cannot accommodate this growth. We already utilize portables for classrooms at the elementary and middle schools. If we do not receive bond funds to build additional classroom space, we will be forced to use current general fund dollars to purchase more portables. Additionally, additional portables at the elementary school would have to be placed on the current playgrounds and fields. This will take away from the much needed outdoor activities of the students. And I can only assume will add to the very frustrating drop-off and pickup situation. Cost of portables continues to increase. What programs are we willing to reduce or give up completely to purchase new portables? You can see from the data that our current facilities also need improvement. It is time for our district to address the facility needs so our students have a safe and comfortable learning environment. The only way to achieve our goal is to pass a bond. Warm regards, Julie Roop." So thank you, Julie, for your letter. Okay, we'll move on to new business. We're going to do the discussion of the approval of policy 2020 curriculum development adoption of instructional materials, first reading.
So again, this is actually twofold. This is part of the board policy revisions that we did following that kind of input. And also the course instructional materials adoption process is actually one of the board goals we have to continue to bring in more community voices of our instructional materials. It's a pretty comprehensive revision, but we wanted to move into a step-by-step system that identified the priorities for our district when reviewing our instructional materials and how we maintain a level of cultural responsiveness. And I'm realizing I forgot to hit share on my screen. So there's a lot of yellow.
Is that yellow? No, I'm kidding.
But the new revisions identify the process in which we will be building a long-range, a instructional materials adoption committee, have community voice and input. We struck out the alignment on course design where materials were built around courses, but now materials are built around students meeting standard, and instructional materials are how students meet standard, and to really identify that alignment. We moved to the selection of the instructional materials process where we define what would be approved. And then we actually create definitions on what is a core instructional material. And then I think the big change we moved in on is the identification of the selection of the instructional materials, where we identified our key priorities on how we are helping students meet standard by enriching by letter A, enrich and support the curriculum, taking into consideration varied instructional needs, abilities, interests, and maturity levels of our students served. B, stimulate student growth and conceptual thinking, factual knowledge, physical fitness, and literary ethical standards. C, provide sufficient variety to present opposing views of controversial issues in order that students may develop skills of critical analysis and informed decision-making. D, contribute to the development of an understanding of the ethnic, cultural, and occupational diversity of American life. And E, present objectivity to the concerns of and build upon the contributions of current and historical of both sexes, members of religious, ethnic, and cultural groups. The district recognizes that under certain conditions, biased materials may represent appropriate resources in presenting contrasting and different points of view. So not saying out and out that we would have non-biased materials, but also understand that biased materials are used intentionally around as a teaching point.
Okay.
Because we felt that an out and out restriction of biased material might eliminate the ability to use. But if we do have biased material, it is chosen with intentionality to serve a specific purpose. Eliminate sex discrimination and sex bias. G, provide models in which may be used as a vehicle for the development of self-respect, ethnic pride, and appreciation of cultural differences based on the respect for the worth, dignity, and personal values of every individual. And then H, which kind of aligns to, brings us into alignment with WAC 392190055 and RCW 28A320320 on just making sure that we actually have the committees and we're in alignment with Washington state law. So that criterion piece is a big adjustment to our instructional materials adoption process that was currently not in place. Sorry, now I'm going quick.
You're fine.
And we do have an instructional material committee in place or not yet till unless that's
Not
board
yet,
approves policy.
where we are by law required to have an instructional materials committee. We don't have one in place. The board, the district is seeking approval of board policy 2020, so we can move forward with 2020P. 2020P would be the board policy procedure on the identification of that selections committee. And we also tonight had discussion and review of the forms for people who would like to voice concerns once that committee is in place.
Okay.
So once this has been approved, it identifies as the superintendent's responsibility that gives me the green light to update the procedure and begin moving forward on identifying and building that committee. So that answered your question, right?
Yes.
It's like a no, but I want this in place so I can.
I make a motion for the approval of policy 2020, the curriculum development adoption of instructional materials, first reading.
I'll second.
It's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I'm on to item B, approval for out-of-state boys, girls basketball tournament. And Mr. Clark is here.
I want to make a note too. This is
This tournament is the first one. One of the board's priorities and goals this year was to modify and update our actual, our district work processes system. Was one of the board goals for this school year. And the Seaside basketball tournament that's up for approval is the first travel request utilizing the new system in place. While the new system is not, I wouldn't call it working, there's gonna be some tweaks, but this was our first chance to give the board an opportunity to see the pieces of data that we collect, kind of move into a formal approval process on what budget it's gonna cost.
May go into more detail about the trip.
I think just answer questions if there's any questions within the board.
This is our annual trip. We're taking 21 kids, 5 coaches, and one more chaperone. Any questions about it? All rules and protocols of the school district will be followed down in Seaside.
So it says the boosters are doing a motel hotel, where are our students staying respectively down there?
Well, we're having a separate one for boys and girls. The
Yeah.
boy coaches.
But I mean,
will
is
stay
it a
with
hotel, the house? I mean, do you know?
the house.
Okay.
The 3 boy coaches will be the chaperones of the boys. The 2 female coaches will be chaperoning the girls. And the husband of the girls coach will be there on Friday night with their baby.
I don't have any questions other than, I know that we're tardy kind of on getting this through, and we do have board policy and procedure. I just want to recognize the fact that it puts the board in a position to have to vote on it the day before they're leaving. I know that there's an expectation that in the future this will be addressed and will come before plans are made. I would be remiss if I didn't say that. And that is our board expectation, because it isn't a formality, it is a policy and a procedure. And although I know this happens every year, it is definitely important that we have those in place to protect students, staff, and everyone else. So I don't have questions.
Would that, in the ideal world though, for like anyone, but for Ron submitting this, and you might not have been the person, I'm just picking right now, would ideally the process have generated and kicked this has to go to the board? Is that what you're saying? Like the form itself, when they're doing this new online system?
I know there's been a lot of learning curve within adopting and implementing a brand new system, so I will kind of ask a bit, just a bit of like grace as if we're kind of installing. It used to be shoot an email out, then we get it on the board agenda. Now it's make sure you have the information. Do you have the budget codes? There's a lot of questions we've asked for travel that has not been asked before.
No, that I guess I didn't want to hear as a complaint. I was more saying it seems like this is just part of. Would
I
it
think
more
I initiated,
efficient?
so next year I'll
Yes,
initiate.
we are, and part of the tweaks is who initiates versus it could have been like someone just an email out. So I think the concerns are noted, make sure we have enough time, and that's definitely where we're gonna go. We're gonna make sure that we are, very timely. It's a totally new process. And then one of the things is this question actually initiates who it goes to. It's part of the one of the things. So if they
Was that
say-
more of your
That's what-
question?
So if they say
Yeah,
I'm
that's
staying
what I was
over-
more saying, because Ron could be, let's give Ron the benefit of that, he could be clueless. I don't know that I.
Very likely.
Very likely, I'm just saying in theory, but it's gonna go to somebody who then should know.
Who then goes from there? Yeah.
The system on its own, and these are part of the tweaks, so I'm not gonna promise everything is working, we're gonna have to work through this. Is it's made so if we say students are going, so you're gonna click a box, are students going, yes or no? Are you staying overnight? Then it'll immediately trigger that it needs to go to the board. If you're a staff member, are you out of state? Yes, I'm out of state. It'll immediately trigger that it goes to the board. So we've aligned the auto initiation on where the form goes with board policy. But there's a lot of board policy and there's a lot of red tape, and it's making sure that we have a setup where you answer these questions, you need a bus. if you say yes, it'll actually shoot the form over to our transportation
Oh,
department.
okay,
And our
that's the part.
transportation partner has to go. So if you don't need a bus, it doesn't go to the transportation department. It just skips that process. So based upon what you identify you need, the form identifies where it needs to go.
Mhm.
It's pretty sophisticated, but when you have that level of sophistication, it also, on your first go, it can have a lot of things to kind of slow it down. So we're, I think there's like a twofold question on too, is we have the seaside trip and we also have this is one of your board goals. We'll be presenting on it later once we're more confident in it. But what you're seeing now is how we should have all travel, how we're gonna start having information come to the board to make these decisions.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, just with the travel with volunteers, traveling with kids, and then with coaches' spouses. Are we making sure that we do have like background checks and all of that done? Okay, just to CYA.
We do that, but there's no volunteers on this trip.
Okay, no, I'm good with that. I'm just in general, when we're approving these trips and stuff, all of this is being done also.
Yes, and actually part of this is how we've been approving the volunteers. One of the things that we also see here too is also the approval of our volunteers that are working within our district and how the board is approving volunteers with our district and having that system in place.
And it's nice that step, when you're filling out that form, send it over to transportation, because then it puts that responsibility to them too, because you could be asking for 7 different bus trips in a week and it has to go over. So it's nice to know that that system's going to be able to bridge those gaps that could come in, because there's nothing worse than you setting up an event and then going, where are my buses? I asked for buses, so. Yeah,
We are,
so that's nice.
I'm not promising that we have everything working, but we are building the systems so everything will work.
Yes.
I mean,
I've been a part of building the system. Me and Candace really have been the initiators, and Eric. And it really is slick. It will let food service know if they need lunches for a field trip. I mean,
that's great.
Simple things. It's gonna let everybody know as quick as we can. So there's no delay in making it happen for the kids.
That's great.
So I think the other question you guys had though is who gets the ball rolling on certain things like that? And that's probably me, because that's an athletic trip, in the schedule. So I probably am the first one to get the ball rolling. I'm assuming.
Yes.
I need a motion.
I'll move for the approval of the out-of-state boys and girls basketball travel.
I'll second it.
It's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
They're gonna have a great time.
All, yeah, of course. All in favor?
I
Opposed? Motion carries. And then you're up for the BSN.
Yeah, I'd like and I think this would be under the Mr. Nesmith to consider signing a apparel and equipment agreement, and I guess the board to advise in this case. But an apparel and equipment agreement from BSN Sports. And what I'd like to do, first of all, is this is the BSN Nike Sports Reward Program. And what happens is if you sign this agreement with BSN, you will purchase from them for the next 5 years. And within that, there's certain perks. You get discounts on apparel, and you also you get money in a rebate. So what I did is I had the head coaches review this. And what we did is we did a cross section. We did a comparison of 4 different apparel agreements. And this is the one that everybody kind of had a consensus, which was the best one. There's 3 important points to this BSN one that I really like. First of all, they give you up to around 30% off on all the apparel that you want to buy, like uniforms and those sorts of things. But even better yet, they give a rebate on the back end. So if you spend for a school year, fiscal school year, if you spend up to $100,000, you get 10% on a rebate card that you spend in the summer. Now consider those kind of middle level purchases that are too big for a individual sports supply budget and a little bit too big for a booster club. So like soccer goals, okay, all the netting you need for baseball nowadays, football, sled, and those sorts of things. those are some items that we can buy if we, with this rebate card. So that's kind of one thing that we kind of liked about it. Questions? I can go.
And we don't necessarily need approval as much as we're seeking guidance, because we understand that the athletic contracts and the athletic apparel can be complicated. So there was a four organization, 4 uniform bid process. And this is the one that our coaches came through on, would be the best on the bid. We just wanted to take this one forward for guidance from the board.
And this is just a uniform. It's not necessarily swag wear, the individual.
Or like spirit gear.
Spirit gear and thing. Boys basketball still wants to go through.
Yeah.
I won't say it, but
Oh,
it's
no,
whatever.
no, they can purchase through this and it'll go to our rebate.
Okay, that's what I was.
Should be beneficial for them.
Yeah, now, it's not just apparel, it's equipment too. And they go beyond just sporting equipment. They have playground equipment, if we ever use that,
Okay.
and a number of other things, weight room gear, weight room equipment and that sort of thing. So it's pretty vast, their company. Now, this is nothing new to the district. We were involved in an Adidas contract prior to this. That has lapsed. And now we just thought, the coaches and the financial secretary thought this might be the best way to go.
And Ron, is it typical for it to be 5 years out or?
Last one was 4 years.
Okay.
So this one's 5 years. Now, this is not a binding contract. If we choose to get out of there, there's a method of getting out of this. Yeah, with no penalty.
I was breezing through like with the terms. I don't see in here that there's any term saying that we have to spend any specific amount.
Nope.
Is there? Okay.
We can't do a contract longer for a year. If
On a
there was.
specific,
And we can't have a commitment for purchase beyond 1 year as a school district in Washington State.
Sounds good. Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
One more thing real quick, as
Sure.
I'm reading through this, it says that sales through the following channels will not be included in spending level totals for purposes of calculating the product rebates, and it says fan cloth, which to me reads that
spirit gear.
spirit wear, so spirit gear would not be available to be put towards any
I think
rebates.
the fan cloth is an actual brand that they use, like part of their company. Fan cloth is a fundraising partner of BSN Sports and BSN Rewards program. But I'll get a clarification from our salesman tomorrow.
Sounds good.
So Chris, do you need you're saying it doesn't need board action or you just want a direction?
I'm just looking for direction.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if we could save some money or build some rewards. That'd be
Right.
really nice.
It seems like it might also bring some continuity to the uniforms and pieces like that that might be good. I'll leave that very general. That could be a really hot topic too, but
Yeah, they provide blue and white uniforms. That's what we're.
Ooh, okay, discussion and approval, board policy 3241, first reading.
This is the updated from our previous board meeting. This is following the recommendation of our administrative training through the law firm Stevens Clay. It brings us into our board policy into alignment with the modified and updated Washington state law. And I'm trying to open it.
Yeah, mine just closed.
My computer is, you can tell it's been a long meeting. I am.
So the question I had, Chris, is on the matrix itself. And they talk about short-term out of school suspension versus long. And I was trying to see if there was some sort of definition of what
10 days.
Anything beyond 10 days
This
is
is a long-term
long-term.
suspension. I don't have it open. I'm just going from years and years and years of being an assistant principal.
Don't have any yellow.
Is there a yellow one not load? We might, if we have to table it for the next one, I guess we gotta. table it for the next one.
I don't feel
My
like I
computer
can.
is just about dead.
I think I want to be able to like really lead it with the yellow, so if we could table it.
Okay.
I move to table, discussion,
241,
um,
3241.
board approval policy 3241, first reading.
I'll second that.
I'm okay.
Sorry,
I'm more
Jamie
than
beat you.
okay with it, because I would like to get the next one approved before my computer dies.
Okay, all right.
I'll open up the packet. and see if we can share.
There's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion about the issue?
No.
No.
All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval for resolution 07-2223 bond initiative. Mr. Nesmith.
We are seeking, with respect to our long-range facilities committee, to run a bond in February. This would be for a threefold action. It would be for grades 4 through 6 upper elementary in the back of the elementary, the current elementary school. It would be revising our fields out the back to kind of refigure our athletic fields as a larger outdoor activity space for both our students and the community for full access. And it would be redoing all the parking lot. It'd be redoing the parking lots around the facilities for parent drop-off pickups. Then that area would be paved for more parking, student drop-off pickup. And then with capital repairs for the, the STEM and technical spaces around the middle school and high school. You're seeking bond action. This is in response to the greater growth that we've been experiencing. Currently our 6th grade is beyond capacity at the middle school, or middle school capacity, and the elementary is beyond capacity. So this would reduce capacity in both buildings, providing the ability to move 6th grade from the middle school into a 4-6 building. I think my recommendation is, and this year, we're gonna have to make a decision on spending money on portables, or we're gonna have to make a decision on construction projects. And there is no state allocation on portable money. If the portable money is available, will come out of the general fund. It'll be coming out of, and I think I just want to make this statement just so it's on the record, that there is no portable funding. It would come out of your state allocation, your general budget, money that is for curriculum, money for that is for books, money for that is instructional materials and field trips, is the funding in your levy money, your local levy money that is used for your athletics and your sports, that's the funding that goes towards your, to your state allocation and levy is what would go to the purchase of these portables. So that's funding that comes away from your athletics program, your curriculum programs, your field trips. I think to make that decision, it's worthwhile bringing that decision to the community to say this is the decision we're between on passing a bond or using this instructional money for the portables. So my recommendation is that we would go for the bond to kind of bring that decision forward to our community.
Ready for us to
Yep.
discuss?
Yeah, ready?
I just have to say, I really appreciated what you shared earlier tonight. One sentence you said that just, I don't know, I hadn't seen with that much clarity, was just really validating that we did a really intentional process, and we entrusted a group of people to come together with also some very, it's their job to be, good consultants, and to not recognize the work that you guys did. And I know I'm just speaking to you, Mike, but you're, the committee at large, a lot of you sat on it. I don't know what kind of message that sends for us to not put the bond forward after we asked for them to go through the process and to really dive deep into the needs of the district, when we didn't sit in on that process. I don't know, tonight that was really insightful for me. So thank you for sharing that.
I echo Stephanie's sentiment. It's something that we, of course, have a hard decision and a hard time making. But when this is brought to us from the community and the group that was hired to do this study, and it's come back with the recommendations, I don't know how we could stand in the way of that, and let the community speak as to what they want.
I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, and for me, even though I've been in this community and we see our buildings and our facilities, it was shocking to me to see that there truly is a need, for a 4, 5, 6 building, because we are busting at the seams. And I know that just recently we've had to do new portables, particularly at the middle school, and a few years before that at the elementary school. And, and I am also grateful for the community group because, I know that it took a lot of time and it wasn't everybody who was supporting it, that they weren't handpicked. They were just asked, hey, give your input. And, and I didn't feel like it was a group that was just looking at, I'm a pro this or a pro that. It was just truly looking at our district as a whole and what are our needs.
They didn't come with agendas. I feel like you guys just worked through a very unbiased but educated process. I guess this is what I felt like you
Data
shared.
and statistics to back it up.
Right.
It wasn't personal decisions.
And I appreciate you being on there because there's so many people in this community that born and raised here, went through the school district, and they're very passionate about Elma in general, and you come into our district, you don't know about the history or anything like that, and you're just looking, like you said, for today and tomorrow.
Mhm.
And I appreciated that because you truly have an unbiased opinion, and thought.
No skin in the game.
Right, yeah, no kids, but you also recognize, the challenges that asking for this type of money is gonna put on our community as a whole, and the need for it though.
Me personally as well, I mean,
Right,
similar tires, so I'm not a fixed budget, I know it's gonna cost.
Did you have something to say?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Being a student who has recently gone through all of these buildings, I mean, I've lived in Elma my entire life. I've gone through all of these schools my entire life, been in all the buildings. I can share from firsthand experience that space is definitely limited, and having that limited space is really difficult. It makes it a really distracting place to try and learn, and you're so distracted with how warm it is in the room and how many people are around you and how much noise is happening and all that kind of stuff. So I think that giving this opportunity for a community to vote on something like this will really, I don't know, I just think it's a great idea for them to be able to voice their opinions on it, especially because so many people in this community are born and raised and live here, and they know what it's like to be in those buildings and in those spaces, especially because so many of them do have kids that they know what it's like to go pick them up or drop them off every day and go in there for sporting events and that kind of stuff. So I feel like opening it up to them gives a really good perspective that we wouldn't get otherwise.
On the other side of it, I don't know how I can sit in good conscience thinking about the money we would have to spend and where we'd have to take it from to spend it on temporary buildings. It pains me greatly to even think about how we would have to do that. But truly, there is no other source. It doesn't come from anywhere else other than just flat out our general fund. And to me, I kind of feel like a dog chasing its tail, right? We need to spend money to buy temporary buildings to put kids in to educate them, but we took money from the education. I don't know how to justify that in my own head. And I don't know how much more raw that can be. That's kind of the situation I've sat in. And I don't want to see us in that because the entire community will suffer.
I think honestly, it's why it really should be a vote for the community. I think for the people in this room to come in and make a decision to buy portables when we know it's gonna take money away from the learning. I think as a board, my recommendation would be to give the community a chance to weigh in on this and provide some direction. It could be the community goes, we want our students portables. But I think that's a big burden to place on yourselves to make that decision. And I really do think it would be a decision that should be made with the voice of the community.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to say, ask, or otherwise before we take a vote?
I just want to say in general, as far as a contingency plan, I don't feel like right now, I mean, portables, I guess, are the only contingency plan, and I don't feel like they are, I mean, it doesn't even address the totality of the district needs, so I don't feel, I know the dollar amount that came, and it's for sure significant, but it is not, it was not a budget for something that had extravagance to it. Like to me, it's like, what would you not have? There's not a part to not really have. And so
The dollar value, and this really needs to be a conversation, is representative of the 2025 construction cost. And it's forecasting, so a lot of families saw an increase on their house appraisals. It's construction costs follow those house appraisals. So when everybody saw that, they go, oh my goodness, this is expensive. Your house doesn't get appraised and new construction is cheaper. Your house gets appraised, and that sets the bar for all new construction. And it's set for a 2025 appraisal value. And here's the thing with appraisals, and this is really where I do think we have an obligation out of fiscal responsibility, regardless of the vote that comes back. That number very rarely goes down. I think a comment came out was, well, last time we saw a bond ran for a stadium initiative was 5.5 million. Why is it so much more now? Well, look at your house appraisal. That's the answer. That's what it does. Things get more expensive. So and the next time we have this conversation, it's just going to cost more. And then the next time we have this conversation, it's just going to cost more. And then there's eventually going to be a point where we really need to have our community understand that this is the only direction these costs go.
the costs go up, but as home values increase,
They go with it.
the rate just continues to
No,
climb.
actually, hang on, your question on the rate,
Not
that's a
the
great
rate.
question.
I know,
So as the construction cost goes up and the appraisals go up, that's actually not a bad thing. The tax rate has stayed the same.
Right.
So the tax rate is not going up. So the cost of the total construction and the cost of the appraisals go up. So it's like saying if I had to relate it to a percentage rate, right, like a percentage rate, $200 of $1,000 is 20%. Well, if you increase both of those, $400 of $2,000 is still 20%. I mean, you know, everything is going up, it's still, your rate is still staying the same. So the rate hasn't changed. The taxable rate is at $2 at the current, in this current bond initiative is $2.68 per thousand, which is really right at a going levy rate.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move for the approval of resolution 07-2223 bond initiative.
I'll second that.
There's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, assigning a bond committee would be Katie Collette, excuse me. Assigning Katie Collette to bond committee. Mr.
Katie
Nesmith.
Quillette has expressed interest in joining the Yes Bond Committee. We are currently advertising for a no committee. New Washington state law requires that we both advertise for a yes committee and a no committee to write the for statement and the against statement on the voters packet. It's still open. Anybody interested in representing the no votes can email me. We will take those no votes and we will make sure that those are on the bond ballots. Katie is a member of the yes committee and is volunteered to be that yes committee to write the yes committee statement, the for committee statement.
So now that we've moved forward to approve for a bond, now you can put the message out there for a no person, or we've already put it out there?
We can put out a message for a no person. We've advertised for a no person
Okay, I didn't know
for
that.
a potential action.
Gotcha.
So we've advertised for a
potential.
yes and no person. It's been on our social media. It has been on our website, and we'll actually have it in the Daily World tomorrow.
Okay.
So we are still advertising for a no person, but we do have a yes person to appoint.
Okay.
And so a no person, we'd have to make a motion?
We would have to
approve them?
seek,
Okay.
appointment at a later point.
Okay,
But we're still trying to do our due diligence to have a no person.
just trying to wrap my head around
Yeah.
it. Got it. I'll move, I need number. I'll move for the approval of Katie Collette to the yes vote on committees. I don't know where it went on my. here.
F, sorry.
Okay.
It's assigning Katie Collette to bond committee.
Oh, well, it's marked.
Oh, it is. Yeah, you're right,
Okay.
it is. Okay,
I
so
still move.
I'll second that.
been a motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
Thank you. Motion carries.
You don't need to, actually, if you don't personally benefit from that.
I will not benefit.
Well, I recognize your relation to Ms. Colette. I will say that
What?
that does not meet the threshold of conflict. of
I withdraw my abstain and cast a yes.
Okay, noted. Thank you. Okay, approval of boys basketball booster fundraiser.
Which I appreciate, because Katie's not being paid for that, so she's not benefiting from
Clearly.
that, so.
Approval of the boys basketball booster fundraiser, Mr. Nesmith and Mr. Clark.
I think this is just, actually, you know what, I think I had you added as H, because that's what I saw we already had a G, I didn't realize G wasn't. So I
Yeah,
did mess up.
well, I wrote it on there, but
I wrote a little H down there. I'm like,
I did
no
too.
idea what I'm gonna write there, but he said H.
I thought it was maybe it was something
I
in
gave you
addition
bad-
to.
I gave you bad advice.
Great, well, that's gonna be noted.
We might want to amend your amendment.
Okay, it's okay, we're doubled up. We can go ahead and,
Perfect. This is just for the sponsorship for the boys basketball fundraiser. We're seeking approval on the sponsorships. I think the boys basketball booster would like to correct their previous fundraiser approval to add their sponsorships with the Elma t-shirts and seats at basketball games.
So I'm gonna jump in here. Looking at this, the reserving of seats, giving two reserved seats to a donor or sponsorship, we've never done that in the past. And so my question, I'm questioning whether or not we can have a booster club guarantee save seats or whatever you want to call it in the gymnasium. Even when we have the stadium, those were purchased through the ASB, if I remember correctly.
You're hitting the nail on the head on why we reached out and wanted to make sure we had board approval. Currently, Mr. Clark and Ron, you can probably jump in on this, has investigated with our student ASB. Our student ASB doesn't have a present plan to use those reserve seats through this basketball season, with basketball season already going. But we also felt it was important to go through the board approval process, that the ASB retained that right. That if ASB wants to have the reserve seats, especially within a football game for a basketball game, that approving it for a booster could be a precedent-setting decision. And we felt that by maintaining board action, with the notation that it's not precedent-setting. It's currently ASB is not running that fundraiser, but ASB reserves the right for that fundraiser.
And it would be considered every year too, so.
Yeah,
no precedent.
so to avoid the precedent setting. So I think it's still up to your decision, but it would be our recommendation that where it's not a precedent setting decision and ASB reserves the right for seats.
I hear what you're saying. I think that it's gonna get messy if we allow a booster club to put dibs on selling reserve seats through a donation. That limits who can actually get a reserve seat at a basketball game, especially if, we're doing very well and we're in district play or whatever it might be. I have a bad taste of going that route.
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion, though. I don't know what the rest of the board feels like, but I just think, I think if the ASB wants to step in and do reserve seats at games, I think that's a great thing. But I think when we start giving it to booster clubs, what happens when you have a double header? And, you have people that want to watch one game, but they have to move out of their seats to watch the next game because, I don't know, I see a lot of potential issues with it.
Okay.
I mean, in a really positive way, I actually want there to be problems with it. I mean, in the sense that like,
Exactly.
we want lots of people to want to be there and in the ideal, I long for a full gym, a full stadium, whatever it is, where those reserve seats are full and it would make no sense for it to go to the ASB, not a given booster. So I mean, I definitely like the idea that's only 1 year, but I can agree with your
But
thought process.
I also think that by leaving it within the ASB, that it stays there year round. And they can't come and say, oh, you know what, this year we're gonna do it. But you've done it, boys basketball's done it for the last 5 years, but all of a sudden the ASB wants to do it now. By reserving that right, I just don't think it's fair. I think that it needs to be one entity, and I do believe it needs to be the ASB because
There is a
for all
rationale on
students.
why the board policy is set to approve using the facilities, and is to ensure the student ASB has first right to continue using the school district facilities. And that's why
That
it's in
was-
the board policy.
Yeah, that's my concern, is that first right should have gone to ASB. I think,
It sounds like it did, though. They just declined it, right?
Well, this kind of went
I don't know
out
that.
prior to even getting approval.
This went out more than a month ago, and now it's coming to the board almost a month after their deadline. They used our likeness, they offered these things, we weren't made aware of this. This is directly against what we've asked to happen. And I mean, there's nothing at this point. I mean, they've already collected money, they've done this. This is why we do this, so that we're not in situations where we are held liable or we're taking things away from our student body, as in the ASB and otherwise. Students first, the choice first. We don't know that. We don't know to ask that. We don't have the answer because it wasn't brought to us in time. I mean, on a month prior, they brought in 3 fundraisers, October 7th, that we approved. This could have been put on it, or if it was a thought afterwards, it could have come to the board and done it again. This is the thing we're trying to say. We should be doing these in proper policy and proper procedure. Again, I mean, that's why we read, that's why we have it.
Yeah, because I noticed that on their form, it says donation deadline is November 18th,
Mhm.
2022, and here we are.
December
Almost a
14th.
month later, and we're just finally seeing this. And then my other concern is, I am grateful for the business and others in our community that support our schools above and beyond through their property taxes. But I also get concerned about the haves and the have-nots, and that is my concern, because at least at the football stadium, season tickets, it didn't matter who you were. If you want season tickets, this is what they cost. And
And you had to put your name into ASB to get it.
right, and you had to, put your name in. And here, clearly, if you donate $500 or more, then you get this special seating. frankly, in a facility that all of our taxpayers have
All the facilities.
contributed to.
Mhm.
So that, that's my concern. But with that particular section of the fundraiser.
So the question is, what do we do? And how do we move forward from it?
I think that's the question entirely.
Mhm.
So
Can we, I guess, my suggestion would be to approve partial fundraiser and not, my only thing is to not approve the seats.
Is that your motion?
Sure. I move that we approve the boys' basketball Easter donation fundraiser with the exception of the giving of reserve seats.
I'll second that.
There's been a motion made and seconded. Is there any additional discussion?
So what, we're still okay with the home games pass for 2, but not the actual reserve seats. That's your
Well,
motion, Jamie?
You know what? I guess we better go back to discussion on that because I missed that part. The home game pass. I guess my question would be, are those passes being purchased
I think that would
through the
be,
ASB?
because if that's taking it right out of the student ASB, I think you would have an obligation to deny that, because that would be giving of
Exactly.
public funds.
Exactly.
I guess I assumed what it meant was that the boosters would be buying.
Would buy them.
That would be my assumption also, but I don't know.
I mean,
so-
it might not say, but I guess I assume I'm making up the amount, but the boosters would figure out it cost $125 for those tickets, and that's.
Can we amend the motion to say that as long as those passes are purchased through ASB?
We would have, ASB law is pretty thick, so
Yeah.
the gift of public funds would be pretty heavy on.
Yeah.
Yeah, two home game season pass for 2.
Mhm.
So if the boosters is purchasing those passes, that would be okay. That would,
They would have to purchase those.
Then it wouldn't be a gift to public funds.
well, it would be if they're publicly fundraising.
Oh,
The boosters is publicly
Publicly
fundraising. I'm gonna
fundraising.
say that we nick both of those right now because parent boosters raise
public
funds
funds.
in the public. And so those also fall under
Public
public
funds.
laws.
Kelsey, what Jamie says.
Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't even catch that. So I'm gonna change my motion to approve the boys' basketball fundraiser of donations, sponsors and donations with the exception of the home season pass for 2 and the reserved seats at home games.
Okay,
Okay, I'll second
so
that.
move on the second. Okay, there's been a motion made and amended. Motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I did.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, enrollment.
No, you need to pass your motion.
Huh?
You have passed your amendment to your motion. You still need to pass your motion.
Can we just pass it?
You made a motion.
Oh,
You
sorry,
need to amend
Sorry.
the motion.
sorry.
You passed your
Yep.
amendment.
Let's go back to the motion.
You need to finish
Pass the
passing your
motion.
motion.
Delaney, crack the whip on her.
I love.
You ran me around in a circle.
I'm practicing for competition.
Ray, I'll parley pro over here.
So what is the original motion?
You get past the new motion now.
The new
The
motion,
amended May motion.
which is Jamie's motion. I'll go ahead and
She
read the
moved to
motion.
approve, with the exception of reserved seats And then the motion was changed to approve sponsor donation with the home games and reserve seats and no.
Okay, so you can make your motion.
I gotta make it again.
Yes, you have to make it, so you make a motion.
Your amended motion is.
My amended
Thank
motion, amended motion is to approve the boys' basketball booster fundraiser of the donation sponsorships, with the exception of the home game passes and the reserve seats.
Thank you.
I think I'm still gonna second it.
Okay, good.
Okay. There's been a motion and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank the Lord.
I'm just glad Christy Kirsch's on it tonight.
Wow. Taking us to task.
Should be, have a little scorecard marking things down.
This isn't Robert's rule, this is Bauer's rule, no. Okay, that's my little laugh.
Real life examples.
Enrollment,
We are growing again. We are up to a total student enrollment for our December count for 1,603 students, 1,603.36 students. So we have now crested the 1,600 student count mark.
That's exciting.
It is very exciting. Eagle Sky Virtual Academy is counting for 57 students. They're up 2. I'm running an average of 43.3. Space Harbor ALE is 8.4 students. We're up to 11.62 in this month, so we came down a little bit in September, but we're back up in December. With Open Doors, currently running a 50 student FTE count. Our enrollment basic ed count, sorry, where's my basic ed count?
Yeah.
Right at the top. Our is with our middle school running a average.
1534.96.
Yes. Yes. I'm missing it now because my eyes are not working. So total basic, yeah, so.
So the difference is
Our
93.57.
year-to-date average elementary is 675. Our middle is 362 and our high school is 496. And we are literally sitting about 30 students above budgeted in each of our buildings, 93 students above budgeted district-wide.
Actually, 101.2 above budget,
101.2.
101.2.
If we write it this, I have a question about that. If we stay at these numbers and continue to rise, what requirement do we have? Oh my gosh, sorry for saying this. What requirement do we have or would be imposed to be moving to the next sport?
2A?
To 2A?
He's not even listening.
Well, here's what you got nowadays. You got free reduced lunch formula, which reduces your count. And we're pretty high on there,
Yes, we
so
are.
we're pretty safe right now. so-
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Because I
I
know
just
our
thought
numbers
that-
as they stand, they're at or above what would normally drive that. So we have free and
But
reduced.
keep in mind, right now, Toppenish is 1A.
Yeah.
And they have 900 students in high school.
Yeah.
950.
So if you have
Okay,
a.
so we'll
700
stay. Okay. So much.
I can't quote a chapter and verse all the time, but if you have a 70% free reduced lunch count, you get to take 40% off your rolls.
Oh, wow, okay.
And that's about right. But you can look it up, WIA.
Thank you.
Well, Chris, the thing about
It's a big amount.
student enrollment numbers is that it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, the blessing is that, you know, we have teachers employed, our classes are being filled. We have more people in our community, but at the same time, it created a need for more space to educate students, which also costs money. So therefore, it's a blessing and a curse of having an increase in enrollment.
Well, Mike was on the projection committee meeting when we did long range facilities. And one thing we didn't make very clear was we actually closed 3 years of enrollment growth this year from his committee. So remember where they said we'd be in 3 years?
Mhm.
That's where we are now.
Elementary is 25, 26, yeah.
We closed 3 years of your facility growth in 2 months.
2 minutes. Yeah. Oof.
So, yes.
Okay.
Lisa, you're up, and Eric, I might,
Okay.
are you still on over there? Because I'm gonna have to turn off.
You guys have the old reports right now. We're still getting our data year-end loaded with our new budget and everything. I'm hoping for January, I can bring you the old the ninth reports. But as you can see, our fund balance is holding steady right now. We might see a big jump in January with our enrollment up so high. We'll get that averaged out in January when they move from budget numbers to the actual
numbers.
So I'm kind of excited with our enrollment and
Mm-hmm.
the extra dollars coming in.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you. I know you're super busy right now, but I
can-
appreciate it.
I would like to recommend a change. I don't really need 20 minutes because I know Eric, I'm gonna need Eric to hang around just because my computer died. I really only need about 5 minutes on that executive session.
Okay. Okay, Delaney. No, Chris, your superintendent report, sorry.
I want to highlight the fact that yesterday Steve Ridge was inducted into the Athletic Directors National Hall of Fame. So it was just a great moment for our community to know that Steve is an incredible leader in our community. He still provides Ron additional support, supports all of our Alma programs. I just want to take a moment to highlight and recognize Steve's great work. We're coming up on the holiday season. We've just had a lot of great things. Our band program last night. Our wrestling team is competing in the dual tonight. They're probably close to done if they're not done. Are they done? Yeah, so I just think that we're off to an incredible start this fall season. Our basketball team had a pretty incredible win over the top of Aberdeen. And I think it's just gonna go.
It was a good game. Boys, girls, the boys team, it was like 80-40 something. It was a fun game to watch.
No kidding. Wow.
So it's your turn now.
I don't really have much to say. I mean, it's been a long meeting, but we're also curious.
That's why there's snacks.
It was really good to see the presentations and how confident our kids are gonna be. I know especially being almost done with my time in the school district, it's really nice to see how far we've come and how far we're gonna go for these kids. I'm just really excited to see where these kids are gonna go. I think it's just really cool. And those badge books, I mean, I wish I had one of those. Just make one for myself. Recognize all my accomplishments, and I encourage you all to do the same.
You and Grace would have really grouped on those stickers.
We'll probably, honestly,
You'll probably.
we'll end up going to Western, we'll probably.
Yeah, you can have a college badge book.
I think-
In your blue book, that's Western.
I mean, especially if we're both gonna do master's stuff, I mean, we might as well. You know,
I just wanted to say, all of those people who pulled off how many sick kids we had for the 2-week stretch. That was horrible and also amazing. And I'm sure that there are people covering lots of places and secretaries trying to keep track of. And when you have 600 kids out across a couple buildings, that's a lot of checking up to do.
Well, and staff and, you know,
Right,
and just
the-
very grateful that other staff members stepped up for each other.
Yeah.
To continue letting our school progress on a daily basis.
Our few weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were pretty stressful.
Yeah.
We got to, I think we were about 120 students down per building.
But we had more than that, I think the elementary almost hit 226 one day.
I just know it was a sacrifice to even stay afloat.
That's greatly appreciated, your acknowledgement.
Well, thank you everyone for toughing it out for a long meeting. Have a wonderful holiday break off. Your Yahoo starts Friday.
Recovery.
We're gonna.
Looking forward to the new year.
Yes, we are. We're gonna reconvene to executive session for 5 minutes. We'll come out. There'll be no action taken.
Recovery.
Yes,
We'll be
thank
back
you.
at
Thank you.
8:52.
Thank you.
Same.
Oh, look at us.
I move for the adjourning of tonight's meeting.
You didn't adjourn.
I'll second it.
Been a motion made and second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I mean, it's the holidays. I'm in the giving.
Wow. You're in the giving mood right